He arrived screaming in laughter long before anyone heard him. The anomaly blossomed out of cold space without warning, a twisting sphere of violet lightning that rippled near the Klingon neutral zone. No science vessel detected it. No Starfleet probe had predicted it. It was as if the universe coughed, expelled something unnatural, and then sealed itself shut again. A prison transport convoy of the Klingon Defense Forces was the nearest witness. Their ships were old, slow, filled with violent warriors chained for dishonor. The smallest vessel in the group, a rusted freighter converted into a penal barge, received the impact. Something tiny collided with its hull, something humanoid, something laughing. Klaxons blared through the ship as Klingon guards rushed to alarms. They found the intruder sitting on the deck of the cargo bay, flipping playing cards into the air as if performing for an audience that existed only in his mind. The figure's face was chalk white, his mouth curved into a painted red smile that seemed too wide, too gleeful, too eager to terrorize. His hair, green as oxidized copper, hung in chaotic strands over his eyes. His purple clothing was torn from the impact, yet he seemed unharmed, unfazed, unconcerned. One Klingon stepped forward, his forehead ridges tightening with fury. He barked, demanding the prisoner identify himself. The strange clown looked up slowly, holding his final playing card between two gloved fingers. He spoke with no fear, no hesitation, no comprehension of danger, only amusement. "Why, I'm the Joker, at your service. Or maybe not. Hard to say. I tend to improvise." A growl of disgust echoed through the room. The Klingon demanded again to know if he was a warrior, a spy, or a criminal. The Joker chuckled at the word criminal, as if it were a title of honor. "Oh, I've been called lots of things. Maniac, genius, lunatic, performance artist. But never a warrior. You Klingons hit things too directly. No style, no art, no punchline." The guards interpreted the insult as an invitation to violence. They grabbed him by the arms, hoisted him up, dragged him toward the execution chamber. There was no point in questioning him. Honor demanded swift judgment. The Joker swung between them, boots scraping the floor, never resisting, simply enjoying the ride. "You boys really know how to treat a guest. Do I get peanuts, maybe a little snack, or are we skipping straight to dessert?" "I love dessert." The Klingon officer presiding over punishment stepped into view, an ancient warrior with a scar splitting his brow. He announced the trespasser's immediate execution. The Joker bowed theatrically, as if receiving an award. The officer leveled his disruptor and prepared to fire. And then the Joker began laughing. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a cry. It was something primal, rattling, uncontrollable. The laugh grew louder, mocking, not afraid, not pleading. The disruptor wavered slightly. The Joker gasped mid-laugh and finally spoke through the giggles. "You're really going to kill a weak little unarmed clown? Oh, come on, a proud warrior like you? I mean, sure, I know my colors clash, but that's hardly a capital offense, don't you think?" The suggestion cut through the room like a blade. The Klingons froze, briefly confused. The Joker tilted his head, raising an eyebrow in comical judgment. "Where's the glory in killing someone like me? No weapons, no courage, no threat. Nothing worth bragging about. You're supposed to fight someone who can fight back. You're Klingons. Or are you just bullies with fancy ridges?" The insult jabbed deeper than pain. Klingons lived on honor. Killing a defenseless nobody, especially one who openly mocked them for doing so, would cheapen their image. The old officer lowered his disruptor, glaring with simmering rage. Execution was denied. The clown would be interrogated instead. He would earn death, or die unworthy of it. The Joker grinned triumphantly. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret it." "Well, actually, you will, but regret can be so entertaining." The interrogation began with threats, force, deprivation. None of it worked. The Joker had no secrets. He offered information for free, all nonsense. He claimed he was a god of comedy, a magician from another dimension, a political activist against boredom. Every time they pushed him for truth, he gave lies wrapped in jokes, until eventually he didn't even bother pretending they made sense. After hours, something stranger happened. The guards began reacting to him, not with fear, not with obedience, but with frustrated laughter. A warrior slammed his fist into the wall after being tricked into arguing about whether space smelled like burnt toast. Another found himself questioning why battles must make sense. The most disciplined among them caught himself smirking when Joker suggested painting warships bright pink to intimidate enemies. The Joker did not persuade with logic. He infected with chaos. Days passed. The prison ship neared its destination, a penal colony on a barren moon near Klingon space. The Joker was to be offloaded with the dishonored criminals. Word spread among the crew that the clown had mocked the guards openly, teased them, confused them, and somehow bent their mindsets into knots. The captain grew suspicious. He personally entered the holding area to inspect the prisoner. He found the Joker drawing crude, smiley faces on the deck with something that looked suspiciously like stolen food paste. The clown looked up at him without worship or fear, only curiosity. "You must be the boss. Big hat, big ship, big attitude. Let me take a guess. You're annoyed but fascinated. You want to know if I have a plan. I don't. Plans are boring. I like chaos. It keeps things lively." The captain scowled, circling him. Chaos is cowardice. Warriors seek challenge, clarity, glory. "Oh, but that's the joke." The Joker leaned in, whispering with childlike excitement. "You fight for glory, but glory is just applause from people who weren't even at the fight. You care what they think. That makes you performers just like me." The captain didn't respond, yet his jaw tightened. The Joker saw the reaction and burst into delighted laughter. "Oh, that got under your armor, didn't it? So if you kill me, you're a bully. If you don't, maybe you're weak. If you torture me, it means you care what I think. I just turned your whole warrior code into a riddle." The captain had no counter-argument. He stormed away, ordering guards to lock the clown tighter. But as he walked, he felt the faintest shred of doubt, a whisper in his mind that hadn't existed before. The penal colony awaited below, a world of rock and frozen dust. Prisoners labored under guard towers. The Joker was marched through the gates, humming cheerfully as if entering a carnival. He was assigned no weapons, no privileges, no companions. Yet within hours, the colony began to shift. Fights started for no reason. Guards argued with each other. One prisoner painted a bloody grin on his face during a riot. Another began telling jokes about Klingon generals. Chaos didn't spread by force. It spread by invitation. "You don't need a plan if you just stir the pot," the Joker whispered to a confused prisoner who'd asked what his goal was. "You let everyone else add the ingredients. Then boom, madness stew." The riot grew uncontrollable, and the guards called for orbital intervention. Before transporters could lock on to targets, the Joker noticed something glimmering overhead. A ship approached, but not Klingon, sleek, disc-shaped, glimmering with polished Federation hull plating. The announcer on the guard's comm system spoke with clipped precision. "This is the USS Cassini, Starfleet survey vessel. We have detected an anomaly on this moon. Prepare to receive assistance." The guards groaned in outrage, knowing Starfleet would observe and judge their methods. The Joker clapped gleefully, whispering like a child at a circus parade. "Starfleet. Ooh, shiny, civilized, predictable. I think I'll go introduce myself. Chaos loves a tidy playground." The USS Cassini was not a warship. It was not designed for conflict or diplomacy, merely research. Its crew consisted of data analysts, xenoanthropologists, and junior officers, hoping to earn their first step toward real assignments on vessels of prestige. They approached the Klingon penal colony with intentions of observation and humanitarian support. None of them were prepared for what waited below. The colony warden met them on the surface, snarling at the Starfleet delegation for interfering. His voice thundered in guttural complaints, insisting they leave and allow Klingon discipline to proceed. The Starfleet team stood firm, led by a composed lieutenant commander who believed calm inquiry could de-escalate the growing riot. The Cassini's crew began tricorder sweeps. Sensors detected elevated stress hormones in prisoners, irregular neurological spikes, erratic emotional surges. The Starfleet scientists assumed Klingon discipline methods had gone too far. They believed they were witnessing psychological breakdown due to violent treatment. They attributed none of this to the stranger, whose grin now widened from behind a barred gate. The Joker watched them through metal slats, leaning forward like a child peeking at new toys. One of the scientists saw him and frowned at the anomaly. A pale human, not Klingon, not from any known colony. She approached cautiously, flanked by security officers. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice gentle, expecting confusion, fear, trauma. The clown replied with a theatrical bow. "The Joker, just a tourist passing through. Lovely little resort you Klingons run here, 5 stars, excellent torture, needs better room service." The guard nearest to him hissed with humiliation. The scientist blinked, baffled. She asked if he was injured, if he needed medical attention. The Joker pressed his palm against the bars, as if whispering a secret window into another world. "Hurting? Oh, absolutely not. Pain is dull, predictable. Do you know what really hurts? Order, routine, a schedule, stability. It dries the soul out like laundry on the sun." The woman stepped back, unsettled by the intensity of his gaze. His words were deranged, yet oddly articulate. He stood straight, adjusting his purple coat with unnecessary panache, as though the dirt and grime were invisible to him. His voice dropped into a low, eerie murmur. "Tell me, doctor, do you like your job? Research all day? Numbers, statistics, quietly saving the galaxy one boring equation at a time? Doesn't it ever make you want to scream?" She stared at him, silent. He leaned closer still. "Come on. What if you could make just one little mess? For fun, for curiosity, for science?" A security officer intervened, ordering the scientist to step away. The Joker sighed dramatically. "Scientists, always so cautious. Try a little chaos sometime. It builds character." The Starfleet team left the cell, reporting the human anomaly. They requested permission to transfer him for evaluation. The warden refused. The Joker, overhearing, laughed as if watching a comedy he'd already predicted. "Oh, they're going to argue. I love watching people argue over me. It makes me feel so special." The argument did indeed escalate. Starfleet demanded medical oversight to ensure a prisoner's survival. Klingons insisted they decide his fate without Federation interference. The Joker sat cross-legged on his bunk, swaying like a child listening to bedtime stories. Chaos grew louder outside his bars, and still he waited. Then something unexpected happened. The riot intensified. It wasn't simple rebellion anymore. It was contagious madness. Prisoners screeched with laughter. Guards attacked one another over imagined insults. Klingon honor codes broke down as irrational. Violence tore across the colony. Starfleet officers tried to contain the situation with non-lethal force, but chaos doesn't obey stun settings. The Joker whispered to no one in particular. It's funny how people think madness spreads through ideas. No. Madness spreads through permission. Once someone realizes they can be absurd, they want others to join the show. With discipline collapsing, the warden saw no alternative. Better to rid the colony of the ghost in its veins. He ordered the Joker removed from the facility, thrust into Starfleet custody, to rid his world of this infection of disbelief. Starfleet, horrified by the violence, accepted the transfer in the name of mercy and science. The Joker bowed as if being knighted. Leaving so soon? But we were just starting to have fun. He was escorted to the Cassini under guard. Prisoners howled behind him, banging on walls, mimicking his laugh. Even as the shuttle door closed, the echo of lunacy bounced across the barren moon like the distant roar of an unchecked storm. On board the Cassini, the crew treated him with cautious professionalism. They scanned him medically, mentally, neurologically. No trauma, no unusual hormones, no neurological conditioning, no pathogen, no mind-altering organism. He was biologically an ordinary human male. Mentally, however, their instruments complained. His brain activity didn't follow normal patterns. Scans showed unpredictable surges of neural energy, spontaneous emotional shifts, erratic cognitive signatures. A junior ensign examining the data frowned in confusion. It's like he's thinking in contradictions, as if he's enjoying sensory overload from his own lack of purpose. The Joker applauded from his bio bed. "Someone gets it!" The chief medical officer silenced him sternly. "You're not helping anyone by speaking." The Joker tilted his head. "Helping? Who wants to help? I'm here to entertain." The Cassini's captain observed from behind a transparent quarantined barrier. She saw no illness, no infection, only a mind that gleefully defied logic. She decided the prisoner required observation at a proper facility. They would transport him to a Federation starbase for evaluation. The Joker responded to the news with glowing enthusiasm. "A new audience. I can't wait to see what tricks they know. Do you think they juggle starships or play piano with photon torpedoes?" The crew ignored his antics, focusing on course plotting. The Cassini's engines hummed to life. The ship turned away from Klingon space, accelerating toward Federation territory. As the stars streaked past the viewport, the Joker watched them like a child gazing at fireworks. His voice softened, calm yet unsettling. "You know, in a universe this big, someone has to ask the important question. Why does everyone try so hard to make sense of it? You spend all your time tidying up reality, trying to categorize, define, explain. It's exhausting. The universe doesn't owe you order, it owes you spectacle." The captain, against her better judgment, asked him a question. "What do you want?" The Joker smiled, eyes twinkling with ecstatic emptiness. "To see what happens when you stop pretending anyone is sane." Starfleet officers exchanged uneasy glances. The scientist who first scanned him whispered quietly to another, "He's not motivated by power, or survival, or ideology. Then what motivates him? Curiosity, without boundaries. That terrified them more than any weapon. Weapons follow logic. Danger follows motive. This thing in human form was neither." The Joker leaned back, arms behind his head, closing his eyes as if settling in for a pleasant nap. "Wake me when we get somewhere interesting." For now, the Cassini sailed with its dangerous passenger. No alarms sounded, no weapons fired, no warnings blared across Starfleet channels. Yet, in the quiet hum of the warp engines, the crew felt the strangest sensation, as though the universe itself had inhaled sharply and would not exhale until the punchline arrived. The Cassini traveled in silence, though no one aboard felt at peace. It wasn't the threat of attack or malfunction. It was the presence of a man who should have been powerless, irrelevant, and easily dismissed, yet seemed to rearrange the air around him like a bad omen. Starfleet officers were trained to handle stress, diplomacy, anomalies of physics. They weren't trained to handle laughter that had no reason behind it. The captain restricted the Joker's movement to a secured observation room meant for psychological evaluation. He didn't resist. He walked there casually, humming tuneless nonsense. The door sealed behind him, yet he acted as if he were in a private lounge at a luxury resort. The Cassini's telepathic counselor, a betazoid, was assigned to assess him. She approached him gently, confident in her ability to understand any mind, no matter how damaged. Her voice was calm, layered with empathy. "I'm here to help you. Please let me know your name and what you're feeling." He grinned as though she just offered him candy. "I'm the Joker, and my feelings? Oh, they're like fireworks, big, bright, and loud enough to wake the dead." She attempted to read him telepathically, expecting trauma, fear, a cry for control beneath the mask. The instant her mind brushed his thoughts, she recoiled as though burned. Images flooded her consciousness, not clear memories, but sensations. Blood mixed with confetti, screams applauding like an audience, humor carved into faces with razors of delight, city skylines exploding into laughter. Not sadness, not rage, just chaos for its own sake. She gasped, clutching her temples. His grin widened. "Careful, dear. I don't like people poking around up there. Even I get lost sometimes." The counselor stepped away, shaken to her core. She whispered to the captain through the intercom outside the observation room. "He has no internal structure, no motive. His mind isn't damaged. It's intentionally disordered." "Intentionally?" the captain repeated. "You mean he chooses to be insane?" "He chooses nothing," the counselor said in horror. "And that's the problem. He doesn't process cause and effect, emotion and consequence. He doesn't react to fear or reward. He only experiences without attachment." "Meaning what?" the captain asked. "Meaning he can't be negotiated with, can't be reasoned with. And I believe he enjoys confusion the way Klingons enjoy battle." The captain stared into the observation window. The Joker stood on the other side, watching them with exaggerated innocence, swaying from heel to toe like a child trying to look bored. She turned to her tactical officer. "We need to get him to Starbase 12. This is beyond our medical facility." The crew prepared for transport upon arrival, unaware that their unwanted guest was already working. Not with tools or stealth. He needed neither. He worked with attention. During meal rotation, he spoke through the observation room's intercom to a young ensign delivering nutritional packs. "Hey kid, you ever feel like you're too small to matter in the universe?" The ensign tried to ignore him. Joker continued anyway. "Starfleet looks at you like your numbers, rank, grade, function, all neat and tidy. Makes you feel like a bolt in a very large machine, doesn't it?" The ensign paused. Joker sensed it. And what happens if a bolt comes loose? A tiny, insignificant bolt. Everything falls apart. That's all chaos takes. Not effort, not strength, just refusal. The ensign looked frightened, confused, angry at himself for listening. He stormed off. Joker whispered after him, "You don't need to fight the system, kid. Just don't hold it together." He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He merely planted a seed. 2 decks above, a junior science officer monitoring radiation levels overheard a passing crewman mention the odd human passenger. She made a comment without thinking. "I don't know why we bother studying the anomaly. Starfleet will assign credit to some admiral anyway. Petty resentment, minor frustration, a crack. Chaos didn't need to create fractures. It simply needed to expose the ones already there." The Cassini arrived at Starbase 12, a sleek, bright structure floating against the cosmic void like a polished gem. Starfleet pride radiated from its architecture, designed to inspire order, progress, hope. The Joker whistled at the sight of it through the viewport. "What a pretty little dollhouse. I can't wait to see the dolls." The station's commanding officer waited on the docking platform, a rear admiral with immaculate posture, calculating eyes, and zero patience for nonsense. Starfleet security arrived with containment specialists. Multiple officers were assigned to escort one harmless-looking clown. The Joker grinned at the overreaction. "Ooh, such a welcome party. Someone must think I'm important." The Admiral studied him coldly. "You are a disruptive influence. You will be contained and evaluated. From there, a tribunal will determine your fate." Joker winked. "I like tribunals. So many people trying to understand something inexplicable. It's like watching a cat chase a laser pointer." The Admiral didn't reply. He simply ordered the containment specialist to transport him directly to an isolation wing. Joker allowed himself to be led, humming a tune no one recognized. His voice echoed down sterile corridors like a disease with rhythm. In the meantime, the Cassini's captain remained on the station to file reports. She sat in an office with the Admiral reviewing her experience. He read the documentation in silence, pausing occasionally to scrutinize her wording. "You say he incited chaos unintentionally?" the Admiral asked. She nodded. "It wasn't persuasion. It wasn't leadership. He didn't force anyone to do anything. He just opened doors inside people, doors we don't normally acknowledge." The Admiral closed the file sharply. "We are Starfleet. We are not susceptible to ideological disruption by a deranged vagrant in face paint." "With respect, Admiral," she said carefully, "Klingon guards resisted torture, but succumbed to mockery. Our crew weren't intimidated by him, but they were affected. You can't treat him like a normal threat." The Admiral dismissed her concern. "Starfleet operates on discipline and reason. We are not barbarians or fear-driven criminals. Our personnel are secure in their values." The Joker's laugh echoed faintly through the walls, as if mocking the speech. The Admiral ignored it. "He will be contained. He will be examined. And if necessary, he will be disposed of." The captain felt a chill. She didn't argue further. Logic had made the Admiral confident. Confidence made him blind. She thanked him and prepared to return to her ship. As she walked through the corridor, she passed Starfleet officers whispering about the new prisoner, curiosity already spreading like smoke. Inside his isolation chamber, the Joker sat calmly in a chair facing a blank wall. A doctor examined him behind a force field barrier, scanning his vitals. Another asked questions, trying to establish profile, motive, origin. He answered none directly. He simply told stories that went nowhere. Did I ever tell you about the time I taught a pigeon to gamble? Oh, that bird had a talent for risk. Always bet on breadcrumbs, never seeds. The doctors tried to pivot. He changed subjects at random, always with humor that meant nothing. Chaos didn't need logic. Chaos only needed an audience. A security guard outside the chamber chuckled quietly at one of his nonsensical comments. The guard beside him scolded him for laughing on duty. They grew tense, petty. They exchanged words, tiny fractures, harmless on their own. The Joker whispered through the glass with no trace of effort or malice. Just a loose bolt. Starbase. 12 didn't explode, didn't fall, didn't burn. But the cracks began. Ironically, no one saw it happening, because Starfleet didn't believe chaos without purpose could exist. They believed danger comes from motive, ideology, strategy. They had never faced someone whose only motive was the disruption of meaning itself. Starfleet was a machine. It ran on discipline, on order, and machines don't crumble from force. They crumble when one bolt decides it doesn't want to hold anything together anymore. Starbase 12 operated like every Federation facility, synchronized, efficient, and immaculate in procedure. Starfleet personnel took pride in their precision. Schedules were followed without deviation. Orders passed cleanly from officers to departments. The system worked because everyone played their role without question, which is why no one noticed when those roles began to shift by fractions of behavior so small they seemed irrelevant. The first sign was insignificant. A maintenance technician left his post early, complaining about poor leadership in the department. He'd never voiced complaints before. A doctor snapped at a nurse over resource allocation. The nurse, offended, filed a report on unprofessional conduct. Two ensigns argued about the viability of telepathic counseling as a legitimate science after working with the traumatized Betazoid from the Cassini. All minor incidents, all brushed aside. Chaos didn't kick down doors. It crept through the keyholes. In the isolation room, the Joker lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, legs crossed lazily in the air like a child doing a handstand without effort. A psychologist monitored him through a transparent force field, voice steady, clipped, irritated by every nonsensical answer he gave. "I need you to focus," she insisted. "Your cooperation is required for assessment. Tell me why you disrupted the Klingon colony." The Joker smiled up at the ceiling without turning his head. "I didn't disrupt anything. They were already broken. I just pointed at the cracks, and they got curious." The psychologist frowned. "People do not become violent because someone points out cracks. They choose their actions." "Exactly," he said, giggling. "They chose without being pushed. That's the beauty of it. Free will is a riot waiting to happen." The psychologist pressed harder. "You claim no responsibility? Responsibility implies intent. Intent implies a goal. And goals are boring." It was the most honest answer he'd given, and it was the most disturbing. The psychologist expected delusion, trauma, ideology. Instead, she found deliberate apathy toward all structure. He didn't want to destroy systems. He didn't care about systems. He only refused to participate in them. Chaos by abstinence. Her report reflected her unease. She recommended deeper medical scans and possible pharmaceutical intervention. She didn't recommend containment practices because she assumed he was harmless, without influence. But influence didn't come from contact. It came from awareness. While Starfleet's doctors debated methods, rumors spread among the crew. The rumors were not spectacular. They were simple questions whispered in hallways, overheard during lunch breaks, muttered in maintenance shafts. Why is Starfleet worried about a clown? What if the Klingons were right to fear him? What if he's some kind of telepathic manipulator? Why does he laugh like he already knows something we don't? Curiosity turned to speculation. Speculation turned to tension. People weren't afraid of him. They were afraid there might be something to be afraid of. Even those who dismissed the rumors did so aggressively, insulted by the implication that a Federation officer could be influenced by something so trivial. Fear of doubt was worse than doubt itself. In the isolation chamber, the Joker continued chatting with anyone within earshot. He wasn't attempting persuasion. He was merely asking questions. How do you know your commanding officer is smarter than you? Do you ever wonder if Starfleet protocols exist just to stop you from thinking creatively? Wouldn't it be fun if for one day you did everything you weren't supposed to? A security officer scoffed. That's childish. Of course it is. Joker grinned. Adults don't know how to have fun unless someone gives them permission. Another officer grunted. Fun isn't our mission. Order is. Then what do you do when the mission stops being fun? The Joker asked innocently. The officers left without answering, but the question lingered. It didn't spark mutiny. It sparked dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction eroded certainty. Certainty was the heart of discipline, and discipline was Starfleet's armor. The Admiral reviewed more reports, impatient with the lack of progress. He visited the isolation chamber personally. The Joker sat with legs dangling off the edge of a table, swinging like a child on a playground. The Admiral approached briskly, every movement a declaration of authority. You're not special, the Admiral said flatly. You're not dangerous. You're just noise. The Joker applauded. Excellent assessment. Noise. Yes, that's perfect. You know what noise is? It's sound without rhythm, movement without purpose. Noise interrupts music. Noise ruins speeches. Noise can spark riots. I adore noise. The Admiral sneered. Starfleet does not fear trivial minds. We pursue logic, reason. The Joker's grin faded just a little, and his voice dropped into something almost somber. Reason is a cage. Logic is a prison. You're trying to explain everything, and that makes you predictable. Predictability is death. The Admiral waved off the remark. You will be evaluated, medicated, and contained until a tribunal determines you are no longer a threat. Joker raised an eyebrow. Contained? Oh, Admiral, you don't contain chaos. You only lock yourself inside with it. The Admiral left, dismissing him as an insignificant nuisance. His mistake was not arrogance alone, it was underestimation. Underestimation was fuel. Ignoring chaos made it louder. Over the next 3 days, nothing catastrophic occurred, but efficiency dropped by a measurable 4% across the station. Response times delayed by seconds. Communications had slight interference from increased chatter. Maintenance logs began arriving late because officers wasted time arguing about priorities. A transporter technician was reprimanded for insubordination after she snapped at an officer about safety protocols. Tiny failures, microscopic delays. Chaos did not break systems. It slowed them, like sand in a machine. A doctor, attempting to analyze the Joker's brain scans, grew increasingly frustrated. The readings contradicted themselves. Neural hyperactivity spikes occurred randomly, without stimulus. Emotional responses changed without cause. The doctor slammed a stylus onto his desk. "This shouldn't be possible." The counselor from the Cassini spoke softly. "Maybe that's the point." The doctor glared. "Are you suggesting he's immune to psychological categorization?" She shook her head. "Not immune. Irrelevant. Categories require construct, cause, definition. If he doesn't operate on those principles, we can't measure him." The doctor scoffed. "Nothing is unmeasurable." The Betazoid closed her eyes. "Try quantifying nonsense." In the isolation room, the Joker began whistling. The tune was nonsensical, looping, dissonant, composed of no predictable rhythm. Officers outside the chamber found it irritating, annoying, distracting. One guard yelled through the barrier for him to stop. The Joker laughed. "Oh, don't worry, I'll stop eventually. The question is, how many times will you ask before I get bored?" The guard scowled. He didn't respond again, but his hands balled into fists every time the tune picked up. Elsewhere, the Cassini crew waited for debriefing clearance to return to their vessel. The captain overheard officers gossiping about the prisoner. Some debated ethics. Others mocked his absurdity. One lieutenant muttered under his breath that Starfleet was wasting resources on a lunatic who should be left in a Klingon pit. Another snapped that such thinking was barbaric. The Joker wasn't dividing them with ideology. He was dividing them through their own values. Starfleet prides itself on open-mindedness, empathy, logic, precision. Yet the clown offered none of these. He didn't oppose them. He ignored them. And that, more than a challenge, was an insult. The first real security breach occurred during shift rotation. A junior officer failed to activate a lock sequence on a force field door due to distraction from an argument with a colleague. The force field stayed active, but the missed protocol triggered internal reviews, slowing personnel transfers. The Admiral issued reprimands. More resentment brewed. All from a single moment of inattention. Meanwhile, the Joker sat quietly, humming. The counselor watched him through the force field, unsettled by a sense she couldn't telepathically define. "Why do you hum?" she asked softly. He blinked with exaggerated innocence. "To remind them I'm still here. They would have forgotten you otherwise?" He leaned forward, whispering as though revealing a cosmic secret. "They don't fear monsters they can't see. They fear what they can't ignore." He pressed his hand against the barrier, eyes bright with something childlike and cruel. "Isn't it beautiful, watching order try so very hard not to fall apart?" The counselor stepped back. His smile widened. "You see it, don't you? The tiniest crack. You can pretend it's nothing, but a crack doesn't care what you think." He lay back again, relaxed, content. All it needs is time. Shift changes aboard Starbase 12 became quieter, not calmer, quieter. People whispered now. Conversations that once flowed openly were replaced by glances, unfinished sentences, and careful tones. Every officer had suddenly become wary of saying the wrong thing. not because of the Joker's influence directly, but because any strong reaction might now be interpreted as influenced. No one wanted to appear unstable. Self-censorship arrived faster than fear, order without freedom, discipline without confidence, a perfect breeding ground for chaos. In the isolation chamber, the Joker lounged with lazy theatricality, tracing invisible shapes in the air. A guard on duty ignored him, staring straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge anything the prisoner did. The Joker continued talking anyway, even without an audience. Isn't silence the funniest thing? It screams louder than conversation. The guard's jaw tightened. He didn't respond. That was the rule. Don't engage, don't react, don't give him attention. The Joker smiled wider. Ignoring someone is still attention. It takes effort, and you're working very, very hard. The guard's breath grew shallow for a moment. He forced himself to stay still. The Joker laughed softly. You see, you're performing obedience. I'm just relaxing. Who's really in control here? The guard left his post early that day, citing stress. Another officer replaced him. The cycle repeated. No direct manipulation, just pressure, just possibility. Starfleet officers were trained to fight logic, aggression, ideology, war. They were not trained to fight suggestion. Suggestion required imagination, and imagination was unpredictable. The Admiral convened a strategy meeting with senior staff and the Cassini's command team, including the captain and surviving crew. Everyone assembled in a pristine briefing chamber. The hollow table displayed the Joker's medical scans, psychological inconsistencies, and the strange neural irregularities. The Admiral's voice was clipped, irritated. We are dealing with an individual who disrupts procedure simply by existing on this station. That cannot continue. I want containment solutions that are immediate and comprehensive. I don't want him talking to personnel. I don't want him seen. If necessary, sedate him. A medical officer spoke cautiously. Sedation might not be effective. His neurochemistry shifts unpredictably. Some sedatives spike cortisol response. Others have minimal effect. We could induce psychosis or catatonia if we miscalculate, the Admiral snapped. He's already psychotic, the counselor from the Cassini interjected sharply. He's not psychotic. He has awareness without structure. He perceives without intention. He interacts without purpose. It's not madness. It's rejection of meaning. The Admiral stared at her. That's semantics. She shook her head. No, that's the difference between a threat we can predict and a threat we cannot. The room fell silent. The Cassini's captain stepped forward. With respect, Admiral, Starfleet protocols don't apply here. We're trying to categorize him using tools that require reason, but he has no reason. He isn't Klingon. He isn't Romulan. He isn't a terrorist. He isn't a sadist with goals. He's an anomaly of behavior. The Admiral's glare hardened. Then we treat him as we treat all anomalous entities. Secure containment. Absolute isolation. No contact. The counselor hesitated. If you isolate him completely, you remove stimulus. If he has no audience, no reaction, he may escalate drastically. Escalate how? The Admiral asked. That was the question no one had an answer for. Back in the corridor outside the briefing room, reprimanded technicians argued over who had misfiled a containment request earlier in the day. A navigation officer stormed past a security patrol, muttering about incompetence in command. A medic snapped at a patient over trivial impatience. Small tensions flared like sparks. Starfleet protocol didn't know how to extinguish because Starfleet didn't believe sparks mattered. Starfleet believed in infernos, in big threats. They didn't believe in slow-burning powder. In the isolation room, the Joker pressed his hands together, whispering lightly to himself. "It's startin'. They don't even need me. They'll finish it all on their own." He let out a small, painful giggle. It almost sounded sad. Almost. A medical nurse entered the observation chamber to deliver supplies. She leaned near the containment barrier, her eyes hollow, exhausted. "Why do you like hurting people?" she asked quietly. The Joker turned to her with exaggerated confusion. "Hurting? Oh no, that's not it. Hurting is simple. Anyone can hurt someone. Children do it by accident." He shifted into a more upright position, eyes glinting. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I want them to see themselves. And that's what scares them. Not pain. Reflection." The nurse stared, unsettled. "What do we see?" He smiled gently. "The inability to pretend you're perfect." She stepped back, shaken by something she couldn't describe. She left without another word. The Joker sighed, lying back down as though exhausted by the conversation. It's funny how honesty scares people more than violence. In the brig control center, a guard reviewed a fresh directive from command. New order. No personnel were to speak to the prisoner unless medically or strategically required. No visual contact longer than 10 seconds. No responses to any verbal engagement. No acknowledgement of any behavior whatsoever. Ignore him entirely. The Joker read the expression of the guard's face when he received the order. He chuckled to himself. "Ah, now they're trying not to laugh. That's the hardest kind." The isolation chamber lights dimmed slightly, a power-saving adjustment triggered automatically by energy consumption algorithms. The shadows grew longer, pooling around the Joker like ink on a blank page. He whispered into the dark. The punchline's almost ready. The station hummed with the quiet friction of a crew that no longer trusted its own discipline. The medical wing filled with subtle tensions. The brig filled with wary silence. The decks filled with officers who now second-guessed their own thoughts. By the time command noticed, chaos would require no further assistance. The system would erode from within, and he wouldn't need to lift a finger. He was already winning, simply by being present. The lights in Starbase 12 did not flicker. Alarms did not sound. No enemy ships dropped from warp. Nothing external threatened the Federation. And yet, an unseen pressure tightened like a silent vice around everyone working on the station. The cause was not physical. It was interpretive. Officers began interpreting ordinary behavior through a lens of suspicion. A glance lingered too long. A comment seemed too blunt. A joke felt inappropriate. People wondered, are they acting like this because of him? That was the power the Joker relied on, not force, interpretation. Give a little uncertainty, and people write their own madness. The Admiral continued pushing containment measures. Orders spread through the chain of command. He was relentless, determined to impose stricter discipline on the chaos he believed was spreading. His voice echoed through the corridors during a command inspection. "We will not become like the Klingons, superstitious and emotional over nonsense. This station will remain orderly. Any violation of discipline, any lapse in protocol will be dealt with." His tone was iron, but iron without flexibility snaps. Behind him, the counselor quietly observed every officer he passed. She could sense they were not afraid of the Joker. They were afraid of losing control, of being accused of losing control. Fear of perception was tearing them apart. On Deck 7, an engineering crew miscalculated a coolant balance due to two technicians arguing over safety versus efficiency. The error triggered no major malfunction, just minor recalibration, but it cost 6 minutes of rework. 6 minutes became data for the Admiral's review. He issued a memo warning of laziness. Laziness sparked defensive anger. Anger turned into whispered resentment. It was no longer about the clown with face paint. It was about the cracks he revealed. In the isolation chamber, the Joker sat on the floor, building a tower out of ration packets and empty containers. They toppled constantly. He giggled every time they fell. A new security guard watched, rigid as a marble statue. "This is efficient, you know," Joker murmured lazily. "Order is just repetition pretending to be clever. Chaos is honest. It admits it doesn't know what it wants." The guard swallowed hard. He wasn't allowed to reply. His eyes flicked toward the tower. The Joker tilted his head, studying him. "You like order, don't you? Makes you feel like you earned your place. That if you follow the rules perfectly, you'll prove you're worthy." The guard's eyes widened slightly. Joker smiled with almost paternal softness. "But rules never love you back. They never say thank you. They just expect, and expect, and expect, until you break." The guard turned away, breaking eye contact. He left his post minutes later, citing need for reassignment. Another guard arrived, quieter than the last. In the station cafeteria, a silent tension hovered over lunch tables. Officers sat in clusters, speaking only to those they trusted, avoiding arguments that might draw attention. A junior lieutenant accidentally bumped into a senior officer, apologized too quickly, and walked away blushing with embarrassment. The senior officer frowned at the apology, wondering if it was mocking him. Rumors spread that arrogance was growing among the lower ranks. It didn't matter that nothing had changed. Perception changed. And Starfleet ran on perception of order. In his quarters, the Admiral reviewed personnel reports displaying unusual emotional fluctuation across multiple departments. He slammed his hand on the console. "He's infecting the crew with paranoia. We need to isolate the influence, shut down communications, limit social interaction, increase discipline." The Cassini's captain confronted him. "You're tightening the pressure on people already under stress. You're feeding the problem, not fixing it," the Admiral growled. "The Federation does not break because of one man's absurdity." "No," she replied softly. "It breaks when leaders refuse to see weakness." The Admiral bristled at the implication. "We are not weak." The noise in the isolation room echoed into the room like laughter that didn't need sound. In the medical wing, a senior doctor stared at a monitor filled with contradictory data about the Joker's brain activity. Two junior doctors whispered nearby, criticizing the Admiral's stubbornness, arguing that trying to control the situation aggressively made things worse. The senior doctor snapped at them. "If you think you can do better than command, request a promotion. Otherwise, follow orders." The juniors fell silent, not from respect, but from resentment. They thought the senior doctor arrogant. He thought they were incompetent. Neither was correct. But correctness had stopped mattering. The counselor watched this in painful silence. Her empathic senses felt the emotional imbalance, like static electricity beneath her skin. It was spreading faster now. She approached the Admiral later that evening, calmly requesting the Joker be transferred somewhere uninhabited. Somewhere where he could not be witnessed, heard, or sensed by a population driven by discipline. Transfer him to a remote research outpost, she suggested, or a decommissioned facility, wherever there's minimal personnel. The fewer minds, the less reaction he can provoke. The Admiral stared at her in disbelief. Are you suggesting fear as a tactic? I'm suggesting mercy, she answered. Mercy protects discipline from stress. It removes pressure instead of multiplying it. He needs distance from society. The Admiral scoffed. We do not exile our problems like primitive species. We solve them. Solve, she countered, implies we understand the puzzle. We do not. He is something else. Don't treat him like a war. Treat him like a weather pattern. You don't fight a storm. You survive it. Her suggestion leaned not on logic, but acceptance. And acceptance was something the Admiral's pride could never allow. His voice was final. We do not bend to nonsense. In the isolation room, the Joker continued building towers. One tower stood for 3 seconds longer than the others. He whispered, "It's almost time for someone to push." No one heard him. At 0300 hours, the first actual incident occurred. A power relay technician, sleep-deprived and frustrated after 17 hours of overwork due to new containment protocols, misaligned a calibration tool during maintenance. Only a millimeter off, a tiny error, enough to overload a minor subsystem on Deck 12. There was no explosion, no fire, just a cascade of power fluctuations triggering emergency barriers and locking down several corridors unnecessarily. Automated protocols misread the data and initiated a partial station security seal. Several officers were stuck behind closed bulkheads with increasing impatience. The Admiral blamed engineering. Engineering blamed security. Security blamed the new protocols. And no one blamed the technician, who had simply been exhausted. The Joker wasn't hacking systems. He was hacking people. Inside his isolation room, he lay back, smiling up at the ceiling like a satisfied artist admiring an unfinished painting. Nearly there, just one more brushstroke. The Cassini's captain summoned the counselor, desperate. If this spreads much further, we won't contain it by locking him down. The chain of command itself will collapse. The counselor whispered, "Then we must change the chain. Change how we think. Remove the expectation of perfect response. Adapt. Adaptation. Starfleet's strength." Yet no one had thought to adapt because they believed discipline alone could solve this. But discipline is structure, and structure cracks. In a moment of calm, the counselor returned to the isolation chamber. She stood before the Joker, speaking without fear, without curiosity, without desperation. "Why are you doing this?" He smiled at her gently, like a quiet answer. To ask the universe a question. What question? He leaned forward, eyes shimmering with manic delight and eerie sincerity. What happens if a society that worships order is forced to see its own chaos? She whispered, horrified. You're not trying to destroy anything. You're trying to reveal something. He clapped softly, delighted. Exactly. Bravo. Someone finally gets the punchline. Chaos doesn't break systems. It shows them how breakable they always were. She felt sick because she realized he wasn't lying. He wasn't plotting. He wasn't aiming for destruction. He was observing. The galaxy was his stage, Starfleet, his latest audience, and he wanted to see what kind of comedy this polished civilization would turn into when the mirror was held to them. she turned to leave. He called after her softly, almost affectionately. "Tell your admiral that the storm isn't outside. It's already raining indoors." She didn't reply. She walked quietly down the hallway, and with every step she took, she heard laughter in silence. Not from the Joker, from the cracks. Morning on Starbase 12 came with sterile lights and regulated temperature, but nothing about the energy on the station felt regulated anymore. People greeted each other, but not with the warmth or precision Starfleet trained into them. They spoke with caution, like each word might misfire. Even silence felt loaded. The Admiral woke early, furious that multiple reports had arrived overnight describing abnormal emotional distress among personnel. He believed it a sign of weakness, not contamination. He stormed into the operations center, demanding immediate resolution. "I want every department head present in 1 hour. We are fixing this today." His anger, though controlled, was not the confident kind used to stabilize a crew. It was pressed, brittle, a force trying to contain cracks by pretending they weren't there. Meanwhile, the counselor entered sickbay to talk to a nurse who had requested leave. The nurse was shaking, overwhelmed by nothing she could explain. "He didn't do anything to me," she whispered. "He didn't threaten me. He didn't manipulate me. I was just near him." It felt like trying to hold still in a room filling with smoke. Not choking, not dying, just losing clarity. The counselor put a hand on her shoulder. "You're not weak. You're reacting to something we can't categorize. It doesn't make you less disciplined." The nurse looked up. "That's what scares me. We're Starfleet. We're trained to adapt. So why can't we adapt to him?" "Because adaptation requires comprehension," the counselor replied softly. "And he refuses to be understood." In the isolation cell, the Joker sprawled on the floor like a man basking in sunlight. He hummed, then stopped beneath a specific pitch as if he'd heard something. "It's happening," he said to no one. "They're going to make the funniest mistake." He rolled to his feet and rested his palm against the force field. No alarms triggered when he touched it. No voice warned him away. He spoke as though the barrier itself could hear. "They're going to fight chaos with control. That's like trying to douse a fire with gasoline." He began pacing the room in circles, moving like a dancer on an invisible stage, delight sparkling in every step. And they'll be so proud of themselves while everything smolders beautifully. Outside, 2 security guards listened to his words through muted speakers. Neither spoke. One clenched his jaw. The other stared straight ahead, but his eyes twitched with suppressed attention. Pretending not to listen took more effort than listening. The command briefing began with every department head present. The Admiral stood at the center of the table like the fulcrum of a machine. He laid out his plan with sharp, unwavering authority. Effective immediately, all personnel will undergo psychological stabilization sessions. Security lockdown protocols will be tightened. All officers will maintain silent communication protocols in proximity to the prisoner. All complaints, disputes, and counseling requests are to be halted until this situation is resolved. We must reinforce discipline through structure. The Cassini's captain stepped forward, her voice calm but resolute. "Admiral, that approach will intensify emotional strain. People need expression right now, not silence." The Admiral slammed his hand onto the table. "Expression is what started this." The counselor spoke gently. "Suppressing stress under pressure increases volatility. We'll fracture, "We are fracturing because you're treating this like a contagion," the Admiral barked. "It's a performance, one man's theatrics. Ignoring him removes his influence." The captain leaned closer. "People aren't afraid of him anymore. They're afraid of themselves," the Admiral glared. "Then they will learn to control themselves." That sentence hung in the air like ice. There was no compassion, no insight, only expectation. And expectation without empathy breeds collapse. The briefing ended in rigid silence. Chaos didn't require the Joker to speak. It required leadership to ignore what was happening. Hours later, the station's cafeteria became the stage for the first open conflict. A junior officer from engineering accused a science specialist of withholding diagnostic data. The specialist snapped that engineering had misconfigured the network, not science. Voices rose. Others observed, but did nothing. People didn't want to be involved. Fear of interpretation had made them selfishly silent. The argument escalated until a tray dropped and clattered across the floor. The sudden noise broke the tension by redirecting it. The science specialist shoved the engineer in rage. Security pulled them apart. The entire cafeteria stared at the scene with dread, not at the fight, but at their own failure to prevent it. In his isolation chamber, the Joker inhaled deeply, like a chef savoring aroma from a simmering pot. Beautiful. The taste of self-induced panic. Exquisite. He lay back down on his back, hands folded over his chest as though preparing for a nap. "They're doing all the work for me. I should take notes." A medical officer entered the observation chamber to deliver a new type of sedative, ordered by the Admiral, despite objections from the medical staff. She approached reluctantly, eyes weary. She pressed the vial into the isolation transfer slot. The Joker sat up and watched her with fascination. "Medication? For me? But I feel so alive," she whispered sharply. "Stop talking like this. You're hurting people." His expression softened with something that almost resembled pity. "I didn't hurt them. They hurt themselves when they realized they could." She glared at him with trembling emotion. "They're Starfleet. They're trained to be better than this." He shook his head, a small chuckle escaping him. "They're trained to pretend. And I don't believe in pretending." Her hands shook violently as she locked the sedative container into the automated system. She stepped away, whispering to herself, as if she needed to hear it. "He's just a man, just a mind. He's not important." The Joker perked up, eyes wide with fake surprise. "Exactly. I'm nobody. Isn't it amazing that nobody can change everything?" She fled the room, breath quick, unable to withstand the idea. In the command office, the Admiral authorized the sedative release, believing chemical control would neutralize chaos. He assumed chaos was a biological problem. He assumed order could be forced. He had forgotten the simplest truth. Forcing stillness on turbulent water doesn't make it calm. It makes it spill. The sedative entered the Joker's system through automated dispersal. His eyes drifted closed. He lay down, limp, peaceful, almost dead to the world. Monitoring systems read stable vitals. No spike in neural activity, no resistance. The Admiral celebrated the report. "See? Discipline fixes disorder. We simply needed control." The counselor stared at the screen, horrified. This isn't victory, it's pressure without outlet. The Joker slept for hours. During those hours, every emotional crack in the station deepened. Without the visual symbol of tension, without the target to focus fear on, the crew turned on each other. The silence they were forced into became torture. Misery without expression fermented like poison. What no one realized was that sedating the Joker didn't remove his influence. It removed the distraction. Without him speaking, whispering, laughing, crew members had no focal chaos, so their fear clung to whatever was closest. A minor supply error turned into an accusation of incompetence. A counselor's closed office door became proof of secrecy. A delay in tactical training drills became evidence of sabotage. Everything became suspicious because nothing was defined. And still he slept. He remained still while Starbase 12 cracked like porcelain under the pressure of trying to hold itself perfectly upright. Hours later, his eyes opened slowly. His pupils dilated in delight. The sedative had worn off, and nothing around him was controlled now. He whispered into the dark. When you silence a scream, you don't stop terror. You just make it echo inside. From the corridor, someone screamed at a colleague. Another shouted back. 2 security officers pulled them apart, arguing over procedure. The station wasn't descending into violence. It was descending into distrust. And distrust was worse. Distrust corrupted unity. Distrust rotted the Federation from the inside. The Joker didn't clap. He didn't cheer. He just chuckled softly. Let's see how disciplined they are now. By midday, Starbase 12 no longer looked like a Federation facility. The corridors were orderly, clean, polished metal, just as they always were. But the people inside them had stopped moving with the synchronized purpose Starfleet demanded. Officers walked too quickly, or too slowly. They avoided eye contact, or stared too intensely. They offered curt greetings, or none at all. The uniform was the same. The bodies were the same. But the minds beneath them no longer trusted each other. The Admiral doubled security on every deck, convinced that visible authority would restore confidence. Armed patrols marched the hallways, but their presence only made personnel feel monitored, not supported. No one felt protected. Everyone felt judged. Every action became an assessment. Every mistake, an accusation. And in the isolation room, the Joker sat cross-legged, watching the chaos unfold through a tiny transparent viewport that allowed him no indication of the station's state. Yet, he felt it. He could smell it, almost taste it in the air vents like sugar melting too quickly. He whispered, deliciously satisfied. They're starting to improvise. The counselor returned to his chamber again, this time not to speak, but simply to observe. She didn't know what she wanted to understand. She only knew that understanding was necessary. She stood before the force field, quietly. The Joker raised a brow at her silence. You know, it's impolite to visit someone without saying hello. She exhaled slowly. I'm trying to understand why this is happening. He shrugged cheerfully. Because it was already going to happen. Order is a temporary story. Chaos is the punchline. She closed her eyes. You're saying Starfleet was fragile from the beginning? He tapped his chin thoughtfully. No. Starfleet isn't fragile. It's rigid, and rigidity always breaks. Fluid things survive. Crazy things survive. You people, you built a fortress out of rules, then forgot to leave the doors open. The counselor whispered. Then what is Starfleet missing? He tilted his head. Humor, uncertainty, the ability to accept what it can't control. You try so hard to be calm, rational, diplomatic, but you've never learned how to laugh at yourselves. Laughter deflates tension. You replaced laughter with protocol. The counselor stared at him, stunned by the simplicity of the concept. He smirked. You locked reason around your emotions so tightly, you never learned how to breathe. Now that something has poked a hole in the container, everything is leaking. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. The Federation taught emotional awareness, but always controlled, framed, restrained. Starfleet officers weren't allowed to let go. They weren't allowed to feel freely. They were allowed to feel appropriately. An appropriate emotion was the easiest thing to destabilize. She spoke quietly. "You're not trying to break us. You're exposing a flaw." He smiled. And flaws make the best stories. Elsewhere, in engineering, a team argued over system recalibrations. A lieutenant ordered one course of action. A senior enlisted engineer insisted on another. What should have been a technical debate became personal. Voices rose. Someone demanded the admiral settle the dispute. Someone else snapped that involving command would ruin everyone's record. Panic rose through professionalism. Starfleet training taught them how to solve problems. It did not teach them how to exist when problems were unsolvable. Tension spread to sickbay. A doctor refused a counselor's request for emergency group therapy, insisting there was no medical justification for mass sessions. The counselor pushed harder. The doctor accused her of undermining medical authority. She accused him of prioritizing pride over mental health. They weren't angry at each other. They were angry at themselves for not knowing how to fix any of it. The Joker's laughter wasn't needed. The crew had begun laughing internally at their own inability to cope. In the brig, a security guard stood rigidly at his post, ignoring the prisoner as instructed. But ignoring wasn't easier. It was harder. The Joker whispered quietly through the barrier, not to him specifically, but to the silence. "Isn't it funny how everyone here wants to do the right thing, but nobody knows what the right thing is anymore?" The guard's finger twitched against the phaser at his hip. His breathing grew shallow. He didn't reply, didn't turn, but the words embedded themselves anyway. "If rules made everyone safe, why do you all look so scared?" He turned abruptly and left, breaking the rule of maintaining his post until relief arrived. He didn't run. He just walked away, needing distance. A replacement guard hurried in, confused. The system replaced bodies, but not the fear inside them. Meanwhile, the admiral stood on the command deck, watching crew members work with visible discomfort. His pride morphed into anger, disguised as discipline. "I won't tolerate incompetence. Anyone showing emotional instability will be removed from duty." The Cassini's captain confronted him again, her voice stronger now. "You're punishing symptoms. You're forcing order when the station needs flexibility." He scoffed. "Flexibility invites chaos." She stepped closer, her tone fierce. "Chaos is already here. You're feeding it by refusing to bend." He glared at her. "I will not run this station like a circus." The implication was clear. He would not become what the Joker represented. He would not let Starfleet look foolish. And that desperate need to preserve dignity became his greatest vulnerability. A distorted hail came through the command console. A Klingon vessel passing through the sector requested a routine traffic acknowledgement. The communications officer responded with clipped, anxious tones. When the Klingon captain's image appeared on the screen, he noticed the unease immediately. "Why does your station stink of fear? Klingons smell honor or cowardice. And you smell neither. You smell confusion," the admiral snapped. "We are functioning perfectly. I assure you." The Klingon narrowed his eyes. "Then why does your voice tremble like a man facing battle while wearing a blindfold?" The Admiral's breath hitched, only slightly, but visibly. The Klingon smirked. "I will not disturb your performance. Enjoy your uncertainty. It is a challenge worthy of warriors." The transmission cut. Silence fell heavy across the command deck. The Admiral looked at his officers. They looked at him as if expecting answers he could not give. They saw him shaken, and that was worse than any Klingon insult. Because if the commander was uncertain, then certainty was gone. In his cell, the Joker giggled, as though the laughter had been pulled from his chest by the very air. Klingons are such critics. The lights dimmed slightly as the station entered automated power protocols. The counselor sat alone, head in hands, realizing that the Federation had built a culture of perfection so strong, even admitting fear had become a source of shame. They couldn't cope with imperfection. They couldn't acknowledge vulnerability. They couldn't fail, which meant they couldn't learn. The Joker leaned his head against the cold barrier, whispering softly, almost sympathetically. "Nobody here knows how to be wrong. That's the real tragedy. Chaos didn't expose their cruelty or corruption or malice. It exposed their fragility, because Starfleet didn't know how to laugh at itself. And a society that cannot laugh at itself will shatter the moment it stops being perfect." Starfleet officers prided themselves on composure. They were trained to face cosmic horrors, hostile empires, timelines unraveling, species communicating through math, silence, pheromones, or song. They could face the unknown so long as the unknown followed rules that could be studied, cataloged, understood. But Starbase 12 now faced something not hostile, not alien, not powerful, not even strategic. A clown with no plan, no ideology, no mission, no biological uniqueness, no tactical value, and they were collapsing around him. The Admiral refused to see the collapse as collapse. He saw it as disobedience. This was no crisis to him. It was incompetence. It was personnel lacking discipline. He called yet another assembly, this time in the primary tactical briefing room, filled wall to wall with staff pulled from duty. Some resented being pulled from critical tasks. Others resented being blamed for tensions they didn't understand. Everyone resented each other for feeling anything at all. The Admiral stood at the front, voice harsh and clipped. "You are Starfleet officers. You are trained to maintain stability under duress. Whatever is happening here is not caused by a threat. It is caused by failure of discipline on your part. We will not allow confusion, doubt, or emotional instability to undermine our operations. This station will remain fully functional." He was met with silence. He mistook that silence for agreement. It was not. It was dread. The Cassini's captain stepped forward, cutting through the tension with measured firmness. "This is not a failure of discipline. It's a failure of adaptability. Our people are being pushed emotionally and denied the ability to express it. You're forcing stillness when we need motion. That is the mistake." The Admiral stiffened dangerously. "We do not bend to madness." The counselor raised her voice gently. "We must bend to humanity." The Admiral turned to face her fully. "Humanity bends to duty." The words echoed in the room like a verdict. Something broke in that moment. It was subtle. No one gasped, no one protested, no one collapsed. But the room shifted, as if every officer there had realized simultaneously that they were not being led. They were being commanded into denial. And denial could not protect anyone. The Joker, though he could not hear the meeting, sat quietly in his cell at that exact moment, as if sensing the fracture. He whispered into the dimness, as though narrating the unseen. The tighter the grip, the louder the silence. The louder the silence, the bigger the explosion. In the cafeteria, a junior officer dropped a mug and startled so violently it cracked in her hand. She began shouting at another officer for startling her, though no one had. Others rushed to calm her, then argued when she refused to accept that she had simply been startled by her own fear. In the docking bay, a medic accused a logistics officer of lying about supply shortages. The logistics officer snapped, claiming sabotage had been implied. A shouting match turned crowd, turned accusation, turned near restraint before security intervened. In the command deck, the Klingon ship that had taunted them sent a follow-up transmission, not with aggression, with amusement. Your silence speaks louder than our screams ever could. A Klingon never fears uncertainty. Uncertainty is the hunt. You, on the other hand, look hunted by your own shadow. The Admiral cut the channel instantly, his composure cracking visibly. His first officer asked if they should issue a diplomatic response. The Admiral slammed his palm on the console. No, we ignore them. Ignore them. Ignore the Joker. Ignore the stress. Ignore the cracks. Ignore the truth. Ignore vulnerability. Ignored, the problems grew teeth. On the Cassini, still docked to the station, crew members waited for clearance to depart. They watched the slow implosion of order with horror. One junior ensign whispered to his captain, "If this is what Starfleet becomes under pressure, what does that say about us?" The captain had no answer. Inside his isolation cell, the Joker tapped 2 fingers rhythmically against the floor, listening to the distant echoes of raised voices, muffled orders, hurried boots. He smiled with delicate melancholy. All this noise over nothing. Imagine what they'd do if something real went wrong. He leaned back against the wall. Order isn't strength, it's a performance, and the audience just forgot their lines. A power fluctuation flickered through the station, the result of overworked systems compensating for minor errors, compounding. The lights dimmed for 3 seconds. Only 3. But 3 seconds in the dark, with fear already rotting inside the crew, felt like a lifetime. Voices rose. People murmured. Someone yelled in panic. Someone yelled back in anger. The lights returned, but nothing truly returned. Trust had already left the room. The Admiral immediately barked reinforcements and demanded an engineering report. But the problem wasn't engineering, it was emotion, and emotion could not be fixed with orders. The counselor finally spoke to him directly, face pale, but voice steel. You cannot command stability through force. You must acknowledge fear. You must address the crew as people, not machines. You must let them express uncertainty without punishment. The Admiral stared at her, shaking with indignation. Fear is weakness. Expression spreads instability. I will not indulge panic, she whispered, horrified. You already have. He turned away from her. The debate was over. He had decided battle lines not against a threat, but against vulnerability itself. Chaos no longer needed the Joker. The Federation itself was eating its own discomfort. Suddenly, a call came through from sickbay. A doctor demanded immediate assistance. A patient had collapsed during an anxiety spike, their heart rhythm spiking erratically. Stress-induced arrhythmia. Not fatal, but terrifying. The Admiral dismissed it as psychological fragility. The counselor, shaken, went to sickbay to help. The Joker sat with his back to the force field, humming off key. One spark left. As if on cue, another alarm sounded. A minor transporter malfunction caused by overcorrection protocols. No one was injured, but the trapped officer screamed hysterically upon release, convinced he had dematerialized wrong and would phase through walls. He didn't, but a belief was now as damaging as a threat. Rumors spread. Whispers exaggerated the event. The transporter is failing. People are dying. The system is broken. Starfleet is breaking. No one knew what was true anymore. Truth, once uncertain, becomes irrelevant. In the cell, the Joker closed his eyes and whispered with contentment. They think I'm doing this, but I'm not. I'm just here to watch the show. The counselor stood in sickbay, witnessing a doctor break down in tears after arguing with 3 patients terrified of imaginary injuries. Another officer refused to eat, convinced food was contaminated by panic. Another demanded immediate transfer off station, insisting the base was psychically infected. The counselor realized something chilling. The Joker didn't create fear. He reminded them that they were capable of it. He showed them a mirror, and they hated their reflection. Starfleet believed order defined them, but their fear was louder than their discipline. Their pride had never prepared them for exposure. Their training had never taught them how to lose composure gracefully. In the isolation cell, he whispered the final truth out loud, soft as falling ash. This isn't madness. This is honesty. And honesty is chaos to people who survive on pretending. Rumor became reality, not because truth changed, but because perception did. On Starbase 12, reality had become a negotiation of fear. Officers spoke in clipped, anxious tones, each of them trying to decide whether the next person they spoke to was stable, unstable, or silently judging them for being either. It wasn't terror, not yet. It was erosion. A slow, grinding collapse of certainty. And certainty was the Federation's foundation. The Admiral stomped through the command deck like a man trying to outrun his own panic. His voice remained loud, controlled, but his eyes betrayed something brittle, something cracking beneath the surface. He issued orders like weapons. All transporters are to remain offline until a full system diagnostic has been completed. Tactical lockdown remains in effect. No one leaves this station until all personnel evaluations are complete. The first officer spoke hesitantly. Admiral, lockdown will increase tension. The crew needs mobility, not confinement. The Admiral glared at him. Lockdown will prevent chaos. We are not negotiating with disorder. A hush fell, not in respect, but in dread. The Admiral believed that tighter control was order. He didn't see that control was becoming the trigger. From behind the force field in his isolation cell, the Joker giggled softly, laughing at something inaudible, something no one could see, only feel. They're trying to put a lid on boiling water. He pressed his palm against the transparent barrier, whispering as if telling a bedtime secret. And then they'll pretend they're surprised when it spills. The counselor returned to the observation window, exhaustion painted under her eyes. She didn't ask questions this time. She only looked at him, hoping his silence would give her distance. But silence with the Joker was never empty. He watched her watching him, like 2 mirrors facing each other. It felt endless. Finally, she spoke. "You don't want to escape, do you?" He blinked, then smiled, not wide and manic, but softly, almost sweetly. Escape? Why would I leave the funniest show in the galaxy? She swallowed hard. He wasn't planning anything. He wasn't seeking freedom. He wasn't even trying to survive. This wasn't about him at all. He was here to observe, to witness what happened when perfection fractured. Elsewhere on the station, departments began cross-blaming each other. Engineering accused tactical of overloading systems with unnecessary lockdown protocols. Tactical accused medical of letting patients disrupt duty rosters. Medical accused operations of ignoring warning signs. Operations accused command of inflaming the situation. No one accused the Joker anymore. He had stopped being a threat and become an excuse. In sickbay, the doctor who had earlier snapped at his staff now sat shaking at his desk. His hands trembled uncontrollably. A nurse tried to comfort him, but he recoiled, embarrassed by his own vulnerability. He whispered to her, hollow and lost, "I'm supposed to heal others. Why can't I heal myself?" The nurse didn't answer. She couldn't. A small tremor ran through the deck plates as power regulators adjusted again. No risk, no damage, just one more tiny disruption. But every disruption now fed the same belief. The station was failing. In the brig observation area, the first guard to break protocol returned to his post, insisting he was fine. His eyes were glassy, pupils slightly dilated. He stared at the Joker without expression. The Joker tilted his head, studying the man's numbness. "Don't break, soldier. Cracks are more useful." The guard didn't react. He only breathed, slowly, mechanically, as if unsure whether he was supposed to. It was nearly shift change again. Tired officers swapped roles, but fatigue made them sloppy. A tactical officer failed to secure a holster. A science officer forgot to log an instrument. An engineer dropped a tool and cursed loud enough to echo through the deck. Imperfections multiplied like bacteria in a lab dish. And Starfleet had no antibiotic for imperfection. On the command deck, the Admiral paced like a prison guard in his own mind. The Cassini's captain finally spoke, calm but edged with urgency. "You have to let my ship depart. You need fewer people on this station, not more." "No one leaves," the Admiral snapped. "You're treating people like prisoners," she warned. He glared, voice low and furious. "I will not allow Starfleet personnel to flee their duty in fear." She stepped closer, eyes burning with restrained fury. "You're not preventing fear. You're weaponizing it." The Admiral trembled, just for a moment, then turned away. His entire identity depended on control, his authority, his history, his pride. If he admitted loss of control, he would cease to exist as he understood himself. He wasn't fighting chaos. He was fighting ego. The counselor, appearing behind him, spoke with weary honesty. "Sir, we need a release valve." The Admiral didn't turn. He spoke through clenched teeth. "We do not release tension. We eliminate it." And with that, he made the decision that pushed Starbase 12 over the edge. Effective immediately, all non-essential personnel are to be confined to quarters until the crisis has passed. Any officer displaying psychological instability will be detained for medical observation. That order was logical in a crisis. This was not a crisis. This was a reflection. The announcement rippled through the station like a shockwave. Officers heard it through intercoms, comm badges, terminals. Instantly, they began questioning the definition of non-essential, questioning what instability meant, questioning who would decide. Everyone felt the invisible hand of judgment about to descend on them. Doors began to lock. Security checkpoints tightened. Hallways grew tense, filled with trapped bodies. Anxiety became physical. In the Joker's chamber, lights flickered once. His smile widened. There it is. The counselor watched him, heart pounding. "What have you done?" He smiled with something that almost looked like empathy. "I didn't do anything. They just needed permission to be afraid." She choked on a breath. "Permission?" He nodded softly. "Fear is natural. Containment is the poison." Her voice cracked. "Then what stops it? How do we fix it?" He shrugged gently, eyes shining with tragic amusement. "You can't fix fear. You can only feel it. Let it breathe. Let it exist without shame. Then it gets bored and goes away." The counselor trembled. "You're telling me vulnerability is the cure?" He clapped lightly, delighted. "Yes. Bravo. You passed the course in Chaos 101. She stared at him, horrified not by him, but by the truth. Starfleet demanded emotional control, but control without vulnerability was inversion, denial, and denial under pressure became madness. Officers began banging on locked doors, demanding clarification. Security yelled orders. Engineers tried to override lockdown sequences. Medical staff pleaded to keep treating patients. Every voice believed it was rational, justified, necessary, and the Admiral believed he could stop it all with force. The Joker leaned back against the barrier, humming serenely. This is the part where everyone realizes they can't hide behind uniforms anymore. And then we'll see who they are underneath. He closed his eyes. It's about to get honest. Starbase 12 was silent, but it wasn't calm. It was the silence of too many thoughts, too many fears, too many people with nowhere to direct their uncertainty except inward. Quarters sealed, hallways patrolled. Officers boxed in with nothing but their breathing, their doubt, and their own minds. It should have made them safe, but instead, it made them volatile. Starfleet was meant to face external threats. It wasn't designed to be locked inside with itself. The Admiral stood at the heart of command, watching system lockdown confirmations scroll across the main display. Each one felt like a victory to him, a sign that order was returning, containment established, stability restored. But his officers didn't feel restored. They felt imprisoned. He didn't see fear. He saw compliance. The counselor watched him with quiet horror. Her voice was measured, but her eyes were pleading. "You're suffocating them. People aren't machines. They need release. They need communication. They need to express." He cut her off sharply. "Expression is disorder. What they need is clarity, and clarity comes from obedience." She stared at him, realizing this was no longer leadership. This was denial wearing a uniform. The Cassini's captain stepped forward, voice heavy but unwavering. "Admiral, if you do not ease these restrictions, you will cause the very collapse you're trying to prevent." His jaw tightened. "I will not bend to fear." "You're bending to pride," she replied. A crack flashed in his eyes, a flicker of insecurity. He couldn't take it. Pride protected him from being wrong, and if he was wrong, his identity shattered. He stepped closer to her, voice low, sharp, defensive. "You are relieved of duty until further notice." A gasp echoed around the command deck. Relieving a senior captain over a disagreement wasn't protocol. It was desperation. But no one spoke. No one challenged him. Not because they agreed, but because they were too afraid to be next. In the isolation cell, the Joker leaned back against the wall, one eyebrow raised. "Ooh, someone doesn't like being questioned. That's not Starfleet. That's vanity in a fancy uniform." He chuckled softly, not triumphantly, almost sorrowfully. Ego makes the best explosives. Across the station, quarters grew tense. Officers whispered through comm badges, asking if the lockdown was legal, if they would be reprimanded for protesting, if appeals could be made. Others stayed silent, convinced that any word would be used against them. Some sat still, staring at walls, weighing their entire careers against one question. If I speak, do I lose everything? The counselor rushed to sickbay, where panic had simmered into hopelessness. Patients weren't screaming anymore. They sat quietly, holding their heads, breathing too deeply. Some refused even medication, convinced it was meant to dull them into compliance. The medical staff tried to reason with them, but reasoning without trust was pointless. Trust had evaporated like oxygen in a fire. A nurse whispered to the counselor, voice trembling, "We need help. We need leadership. We need someone to say it's okay to feel this way." The counselor closed her eyes because she knew that no one in authority would say that, not now. Vulnerability had been declared treason. The Admiral had criminalized fear. Fear responded like any trapped creature. It grew claws. Back in command, a junior operations officer hesitantly spoke to the Admiral, voice slow, careful, terrified. "Sir, long-term emotional suppression under confinement can trigger mass breakdowns. The crew needs a release. It doesn't have to be disorder, just expression." The Admiral turned to him, eyes cold. "That sounds like panic talking. I suggest you control your nerves before you spread instability." The officer went pale, swallowed, and stepped back into silence. The Admiral believed he was winning. He believed silence was order. He believed restraint was clarity. He believed fear could be commanded out of existence. On the other side of the brig, the Joker tilted his head, listening to the silence of command. He smiled thinly. "You can't tell fear what to do. It's the only honest emotion people have left." He whispered like a teacher, giving a final hint before an exam. And honesty is chaos to people who think they're perfect. Suddenly, a comm alert chimed throughout the station. A voice crackled through, not from command, but from someone who shouldn't be transmitting at all. "This is Lieutenant Sharon from engineering. We need assistance. We have a serious problem. Someone overloaded a diagnostic relay. We have cascading faults across secondary systems." The Admiral slammed the console. "Impossible. We shut down those systems. They can't overload." Then the voice continued, trembling, panicked. "They overloaded because someone tried to fix them without permission. They didn't want to get yelled at. They didn't want a reprimand. They acted alone. They were trying to help. Help, a virtue, turned into sabotage because fear reshaped intention." The Admiral stared at the communications panel with a hollow expression. He had created a crew so afraid of mistakes that they sabotaged the station, trying to avoid blame. The Cassini's captain stepped forward again, no longer calm, no longer careful. "You're destroying this crew by making them afraid of themselves. We are explorers, scientists, diplomats. We don't survive by pretending we're flawless. We survive by admitting we're flawed and working together." The Admiral finally turned to face her. His voice cracked. "If Starfleet officers cannot be perfect, then what are they?" Every word was desperate, every syllable terrified. He wasn't protecting discipline. He was protecting identity. He couldn't imagine a Starfleet that was human. And that was the real threat, the counselor whispered, barely audible. We're not perfect. We never were. We just pretended." The Admiral stared at her, and for the first time, he looked lost. In the isolation cell, the Joker spoke softly, compassionately, unbearably honest. That's it. That's the moment. The punchline lands. He looked almost sad. They built their identity on perfection, and now they have to live with the truth that they're just people. He closed his eyes. Now let's see if people can be good without pretending. Starbase 12 no longer hummed with order. It vibrated with tension. Not loud, not chaotic, but tight and trembling, like a string pulled too far, one breath away from snapping. Even the environmental system seemed quieter, as if afraid to disturb the fragile calm. The Admiral stood alone in his office, staring out at the stars. They should have been comforting, perfect, distant, unmoved by human flaws. Instead, they reminded him that perfection was unreachable, always just beyond his grasp. That thought terrified him more than the Joker ever could. He rubbed his temples, whispering to himself, "I was supposed to protect them from fear, not create it." The door chimed. He didn't turn. Enter. The Cassini's captain and the counselor stepped forward. They didn't argue. They didn't scold. They simply stood in silence until he finally faced them. "I have failed," he said, not to them, but to himself. The counselor moved closer, voice soft. "No, you're feeling something. You're admitting it. That's not failure. That's beginning." The Admiral closed his eyes. He was exhausted. His certainty had cracked, and instead of collapsing, he felt relieved, fragile, exposed, but relieved. He nodded once, then again. Then he breathed. It was the first honest breath he'd taken since the Joker arrived. The counselor smiled. "We need to talk to the crew. We need to let them speak. We have to acknowledge what they're feeling." He nodded again, firmer this time. "Yes, they need to be heard. I need to hear them." In the brig, the Joker lay on the bench, staring at the ceiling, arms folded behind his head, humming a slow, eerie tune. Then he stopped. He felt it. The atmosphere had changed. Someone finally said the truth. He sat up. Well, that was fast. Usually takes people years to be honest. They must really be scared. He grinned. Fear is honest. Minutes later, the station-wide intercom engaged. The Admiral's voice came through. But this time it wasn't sharp or commanding or rigid. It was human, uncertain, heavy. "This is Admiral Rinald. I want to talk to you, all of you. What has happened here? The panic, the shutdowns, the confusion. It didn't come from the Joker. It came from us, from me. I was afraid. I tried to pretend I wasn't. I thought order meant controlling fear, not acknowledging it." He paused. The silence felt like a held breath across the station. But order isn't denial. Discipline isn't pretending. We are explorers, scientists, diplomats, engineers, humans with doubts and limits. And those limits don't make us weak. They make us real. And that is something the Federation should never hide from. Across the station, officers stopped walking, stopped panicking, stopped whispering. They listened. "I am lifting the restrictions. Sick bay patients may leave if they are stable. Quarters are no longer sealed. You are free to speak, to ask questions, to express fear, frustration, confusion, relief, whatever you are feeling. Not despite being Starfleet officers, but because you are Starfleet officers. Because honest people serve better than perfect ones." Then the broadcast ended, and the station exhaled. Doors slid open. Officers stepped into the corridor, unsure at first, then relieved. Some cried quietly. Some hugged. Some laughed out of sheer release. Sickbay nurses wiped tears from their eyes as patients walked freely. Engineering teams admitted mistakes and worked together instead of hiding problems. The tension didn't vanish, but it transformed into connection, support, collaboration, into humanity. The Joker sat in his cell, listening. His smile didn't disappear. It changed, softer, sadder, almost proud. Imagine that. They chose truth, without a punchline. He stood slowly, pressing his hands against the transparent barrier. Looks like you didn't need me after all. Oh well, can't have a clown without an audience. The Cassini's captain entered the brig, accompanied by 2 security officers. She faced the Joker. You're being transferred, not to a different cell, to a diplomatic holding facility. You're not a threat anymore. Not here. Not now. The Joker raised an eyebrow. They're releasing the clown? That's dangerously optimistic. She shook her head. No, we're accepting that you're dangerous. We're just not letting fear decide how we handle you. You'll be studied, humanely, ethically. You'll be monitored, but we won't become you to defeat you. The Joker tapped the barrier thoughtfully. So you won't kill me, torture me, or break me. You're just going to understand me? She nodded. If chaos reveals the truth, then we need to know why, and how, and what to do with that truth in the future. The Joker laughed softly. You're going to make me a research project? She replied calmly. You made yourselves one first. He smirked, nodding with theatrical approval. Congratulations, Starfleet. You win. The joke. You laughed at yourselves. The barrier disengaged. The security team escorted him out, but he didn't resist. He walked willingly, humming under his breath. His smile wasn't mockery now. It was curiosity. Outside, officers parted as he passed. Some glared, some shivered, some stared with fascination, as if he were a mirror they'd never expected to see. He bowed dramatically as he walked. You're welcome for the therapy session, folks. Tip your clown on the way out. He stepped aboard the transfer vessel. The doors closed behind him. As the ship disengaged, Starbase 12 felt lighter. Not safe, not certain, just honest. And honesty, it turned out, was enough. On the bridge, the Admiral watched the vessel depart. The counselor stood beside him. Do you think he changed us? She asked. He shook his head slowly. No, I think we changed because of him. And that's the difference. In the distance, the transfer ship vanished into warp. The Joker leaned back in his seat, whispering to himself, eyes gleaming with mischief and something deeper. If you teach people to see their flaws, eventually they won't need clowns anymore. He chuckled, a quiet little laugh. Now that's the real punchline. The transfer vessel carrying the Joker flew through warp space like a small dart gliding between the stars. Its interior was calm, quiet, too quiet for a passenger like him. He sat unrestrained in a passenger seat, hands folded politely, humming just loud enough to annoy the escorting officers without violating any regulation. Starfleet had insisted on humane treatment. No restraints unless necessary. No isolation unless harmful. Just vigilance. The security commander assigned to the transfer sat across from him, rigid posture, phaser holstered, but ready. She avoided looking at him. The Joker tilted his head slightly, amused. You know, staring into the void is fine, but staring at me would be so much more entertaining. We could chat, swap stories, compare neuroses. It would be fun. She didn't respond. She focused on breathing evenly, keeping her heartbeat controlled, as if the slightest acknowledgement could unravel her composure. He smiled wider. Ah, silence again. Don't worry, I respect the quiet. It's like a blank page you're afraid to write on. Still no response. He leaned back against the seat with exaggerated relaxation. You're not afraid of me. You're afraid of what you might think if you listen. Her jaw tightened. Just a little. Not panic. Not anger. Recognition. He nodded approvingly. Good. You understand the game. Don't let the punchline in, and it can't hurt you. She finally spoke, quietly. There is no game. He clapped lightly. Oh, there's always a game. You just don't know the rules yet. The pilot's voice interrupted through the calm. Approaching diplomatic holding station. Prepare for docking. The station was small, a facility orbiting a quiet moon, designed for containment. Without cruelty. It wasn't a prison. It wasn't a research lab. It was a holding center for anomalies, individuals whose existence challenged norms. Rare telepaths, unstable precognitives, rescued victims of mind control experiments. People whose minds were not dangerous by intent, but by complexity. A perfect place for him. As the vessel docked, the Joker looked out the viewport, eyes twinkling. A sanctuary of confusion. How poetic. The airlock cycled open. A small, welcoming party waited on the other side. Not armed guards, not scientists, diplomats. The first of them stepped forward, an older Betazoid official with calm eyes and a gentle voice. Welcome. I am Director Amarin. Our goal here is to understand you, and to help you understand us. No hostility, no coercion. The Joker smiled beautifully, almost sincerely. You want to talk, not dissect. I like that. Amarin nodded. Your mind is unusual, not because it's damaged, but because it rejects structure. It exists freely. It reacts freely. That is rare in the Federation. We study rare things, not to cure them, but to learn from them. Joker clasped his hands together like a delighted child. I love show and tell. The security commander exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. She nodded to the director, then stepped aside. Transfer of custody complete. Amarin gave her a respectful bow. You served well. Thank you. She left quickly, as though staying longer might let the Joker's presence seep back into her mind. Once the airlock sealed behind her, silence settled again. Amarin gestured down a corridor. Come, let me show you your quarters. Joker followed, hands behind his back, rocking on his heels as he walked. The station was open in design, soft lighting, transparent doors. Not for security, but for trust. No one here was caged. They were cared for. Other residents moved through the corridors. A young Vulcan-human hybrid stared at his fingertips with fascination, muttering equations to himself. A woman from a species unknown wept silently, not from sadness, but because she felt every thought around her as pain. A wiry old Tellarite drew nonsense symbols on a digital canvas, symbols that later turned out to predict subspace shifts. The Joker passed them all, smiling warmly. I'm among the beautifully broken, perfect audience. Amarin stopped at a suite, private, furnished, comfortable. A desk, a window to space, a replicator, a bed. No lock on the door, no restraints, just trust. He gestured to it. These are yours, for as long as needed. You may speak to anyone here. You may ask questions. You may request privacy. All we ask is honesty. Joker snickered softly. Honesty? With me? That's a dangerous request. Amarin smiled. All truth is dangerous. The Joker loved that answer. He stepped inside, flopping onto the bed dramatically. You might be the first people I won't accidentally ruin. Amarin nodded calmly. Chaos cannot ruin what does not pretend to. Be orderly. Joker stared at him with new interest. His smile lost its edge. It softened, curious. You're not trying to fix me. Amarin shook his head. You are not broken. You are disruptive. Disruption is part of evolution, and fear of disruption is part of stagnation. Joker whispered slowly, savoring the words. Evolution needs chaos. Amarin bowed his head. And chaos needs understanding, not control. The Joker lay back, arms folded behind his head, eyes drifting shut. He wasn't plotting. He wasn't manipulating. He was resting. A calm he'd never shown on the starbase washed over him. He murmured to himself, They don't fear me here. Amarin nodded. That is why you're safe. The door slid closed. Not locked, just private. The Joker laughed quietly to himself. So this is what it's like to not be a problem. He blinked at the ceiling. His voice softened. It feels unfamiliar. Meanwhile, back on Starbase 12, officers slowly began to reconnect. Conversations returned. Laughter echoed. Not nervous laughter, but real laughter. Engineers apologized. Medical staff shared feelings instead of suppressing them. People rebuilt trust by admitting imperfection. Not because they were forced, because they were allowed. The counselor gave a group session, voluntary. Officers filled the room on their own. The admiral attended, quietly, listening. He didn't command. He didn't lecture. He sat, learned, accepted. The Cassini prepared for departure, not with relief, but with pride. They would return to exploration, taking with them a lesson the Federation rarely faced. Discovery isn't only among the stars. Sometimes it's within ourselves. Across the sector, the Joker lay on his bed, eyes half open, smiling at nothing in particular. They learned something, and I didn't even have to blow anything up. He chuckled, soft and gentle. Oh, the galaxy is going to be fun. The diplomatic holding station was quiet in ways Starbase 12 never could be. It wasn't silence born from restraint or fear or tension. It was silence that belonged to a library, to a monastery, to a place where people understood that stillness was not emptiness. It was space for thoughts to breathe. The Joker lay sideways on the floor, chin balanced on his palm, a stylus in his hand, doodling on a digital pad like a bored child in class. Except his doodles weren't random. They were spirals that never repeated the same curve twice. Explosions shaped like flowers. Faces that looked calm until you noticed the eyes. Words with no pattern, sentences without context. Not nonsensical, but too honest to follow rules. A voice interrupted him gently. May I join you? He looked up. A Vulcan-human hybrid stood at the doorway, hands clasped behind his back. His tone was calm, but not cold. Curiosity warmed it. The Joker shrugged. Depends. Are you here to diagnose my doodles or admire them? The hybrid sat cross-legged on the floor. Admiring would be more logical. Interpretation implies intention. Art does not require intention. Joker grinned. Spoken like someone who thinks logic is a leash, not a language. The hybrid inclined his head slightly. I am Vesher. May I ask what you are drawing? Joker smirked. Chaos. Vishar considered this. Chaos is not an object. It is a property of existence. Joker tapped a symbol on the pad. Exactly. So I draw existence. Sloppy, unpredictable, and sometimes funny. Vishar studied the drawing. Spirals, explosions, fragmented sentences. He frowned slightly. You depict entropy. Ah, Joker exclaimed. But look closer. It isn't decay without purpose. It's change without permission. Vishar paused. That distinction is not illogical. Joker rolled onto his back, arms spread. Of course it's not illogical. Chaos isn't anti-logic. Logic just hates competition. The hybrid blinked. You believe chaos and logic coexist. They have to, Joker said. If everything were logical, nothing would surprise you. If everything were chaotic, nothing would matter. Meaning needs a little mystery. Mystery needs a little meaning. They flirt. They dance. They annoy each other into balance. Vishar stared at him, stunned in the quiet way Vulcanoids feel shock. It wasn't offense. It was realization. Joker pointed at him, beaming. You get it, don't you? Logic isn't supposed to enslave your mind. It's supposed to stop your mind from enslaving you, Vishar whispered. I have struggled with that balance all my life. The Joker shrugged. Then get better at struggling. Life isn't about solving yourself. It's about arguing with yourself until it's funny. Vishar bowed his head. I appreciate your insight. The Joker blinked dramatically. Did a Vulcan hybrid just say he appreciated me? Alert Starfleet. Emotions have breached the perimeter. Vishar stood. I would like to continue this discussion another time. Joker waved a dismissive hand. Anytime you want to argue with yourself out loud, I'm your clown. When Vishar left, the Joker remained lying on the floor, staring at the ceiling. His smile slipped into something softer, something without teeth. He murmured, They're not afraid of me here. That's refreshing and boring. He closed his eyes, his voice lowered, thoughtful. Maybe chaos is only fun when people pretend they don't have it inside them. He chuckled. Guess I'm out of a job. Hours later, Director Amaren approached him again. You've been quiet, more than usual. Is something troubling you? Joker leaned forward, thoughtful, arms on knees. I'm thinking. Dangerous pastime. Has anyone ever tried to fix me by not trying to fix me? Amaren smiled. Nothing needs fixing that's not broken. Joker frowned. You're saying I'm complete? Amaren didn't hesitate. You are whole. You are simply disruptive. And disruption is not a disease. It is a mirror. The Joker stared. Then he laughed. A strange, startled laugh, like someone hearing a joke about themselves for the first time. So, I'm a reflection? Amaren nodded. And reflections are only dangerous when people don't want to see themselves. The Joker blinked slowly, eyes widening as if someone had punched him with logic. Then he grinned. Well, that explains everything Starfleet did wrong. Amaren placed a hand on the railing beside him, thoughtful. They feared what your presence reflected. They feared their own fragility. Once they accepted it, your power faded. Joker laughed again, but not wildly, calmly, genuinely. So I'm harmless to honest people, hilarious. Amaren nodded. Chaos does not destroy truth. It destroys illusion. The Joker lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Then I guess I'm in the right place. Surrounded by people who don't lie to themselves. Amaren bowed slightly. Enjoy the quiet, Joker. It is rare for someone like you. As he left, the Joker whispered to himself, Quiet isn't so bad. Chaos needs a nap sometimes. He folded his hands behind his head. But someday, someone else will pretend again, and I'll wake up. For now, he rested, not as a threat, not as a weapon, as a mirror. The diplomatic holding station moved through space with no urgency. It drifted along its course like a thought taking its time to form. No alarms, no friction, no tension. It was a place built for minds that didn't fit inside neat boxes, and a place that didn't try to force them to. The Joker sat on the floor again, cross-legged, staring out the window at stars streaking past. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't muttering. He wasn't performing. He sat still, quiet, letting space exist without commentary. The silence wasn't oppressive. It was voluntary. A soft chime sounded at his door. He didn't look away from the window. "Come in," he said lightly. "I promise I'm not building a bomb. Those days are behind me. Maybe." The door slid open. Director Amaren stepped inside, holding a thin tablet. He didn't stand like authority. He stood like a listener. "We've received communication from Starbase 12. Joker raised an eyebrow, still not turning around. "Let me guess. They want to thank me, send me flowers, put up a statue, call it the clown who saved Starfleet." Very tasteful, very ironic. Amaran set the tablet on a table. No statuary, just gratitude, and a question. That made the Joker turn slightly, curiosity glittering like a flicker of mischief. A question? Starfleet's learning to ask questions. Progress. Amaran nodded. They've requested an analysis, not of you, not of chaos, of themselves. They want to understand how to prevent what happened, not through control, but awareness. The Joker blinked slowly. "You want me to evaluate Starfleet?" Amaran sat across from him, not as a threat, as an observer, a perspective they lack. For a moment, Joker said nothing. He stared at the stars, lips curling with genuine amusement. The Federation wants therapy from the Joker? Oh, how deliciously tragic. Amaran let the comment settle. He didn't laugh. He simply waited. The Joker sighed, collapsing backward onto his hands. "Fine, sure, why not? I'll consult. I'll diagnose the galaxy's most self-righteous organization. But only if they understand one thing." Amaran tilted his head. "And what would that be?" Joker leaned forward, eyes bright. Not manic, not cruel, but clear. "They have to stop pretending sanity is the only version of health." Amaran nodded softly. "That is exactly why they need you." The Joker laughed. Not cackling, not taunting, but happily, sincerely. "Well then, let's teach the future how to loosen their collars before they choke on them." He stood and stretched, limbs cracking like old hinges. For once, he didn't perform flourish. He didn't bow. He didn't smirk. He simply walked. 2 days later, a secure subspace channel flickered to life on Starbase 12. Officers gathered around a projector screen. The Admiral, looking calmer but humbled, sat front row. The counselor stood beside him. The Cassini's captain watched quietly. The connection stabilized, and the Joker's face appeared. Not grinning wildly, not taunting, just present. His voice was calm. "Hello, Starbase 12. Look at you, still standing, still thinking, still pretending your uniforms do most of the work." A few officers chuckled nervously. He continued, "Relax. I'm not here to break you. I'm here to tell you something you already know, but keep forgetting. Because you like wearing masks without makeup." He held up a finger as though revealing a magic trick. "Fear is not weakness. If you ignore it, it grows teeth. If you acknowledge it, it becomes information. Fear is data. Treat it like data, not failure." Several officers shared glances. It made sense. Too much sense. He leaned closer to the camera. "Next. Control is not order. Control is panic wearing authority's jacket. Order is not silence. Order is movement with awareness." He tapped his head. "If your systems can't bend, they break. If your minds can't bend, the same thing happens." The Admiral breathed in slowly, taking every word. The Joker continued, softer now. "And last, perfection is a costume. Wear it too tightly, and it suffocates you. Take it off, and you might finally learn how to move without fear of tearing the fabric." He paused, Then he smiled. Not mockery, not cruelty. Respect. You did something impressive. You admitted the truth. Societies don't improve by denying cracks. They improve by seeing them, naming them, laughing at them, and fixing them with open eyes. He leaned back, clasping his hands in his lap. Good luck, Starfleet. Your future depends not on your logic, or your discipline, or your diplomacy, but on your self-awareness. He winked. Try not to become boring. The transmission ended. The room didn't clap. It breathed. Officers exhaled tension they never realized they held. The Admiral stood, not to command, but to speak softly. We move forward, together, not toward perfection, but toward honesty. The words settled into every ear like warm light. In his quarters, the Joker sat back, crossing his arms with a satisfied little nod. Teaching order how to survive chaos. Who would have thought? Bashar reappeared in the doorway. Are you pleased? Joker shrugged. Pleasing people isn't my style. But watching them evolve? That's entertainment. Bashar inclined his head. Do you believe you will remain here peacefully? Joker paused, then smirked lightly. Peacefully? Sure. Quietly? Never. He glanced out the window again. There's always someone out there building walls around themselves, and eventually they'll need a clown to knock. He laughed softly. Chaos never dies. It just waits for the next perfectionist. The diplomatic holding station glowed faintly against the stars, a small sanctuary drifting through space. Its mission was not correction, not containment, but comprehension. The Joker, oddly, fit within that mission perfectly, not as a prisoner, but as a specimen of perspective. Yet even so, he was still watched, not because he would escape, but because unpredictability deserved respect. The station's daily operations were calm. Researchers observed, residents reflected, and no one rushed. Even the doors opened more gently here, as if refusing to startle anyone who lived inside. One morning, the Joker woke to find Director Amarin sitting across from him. The director held no pad, no data, no weapon, just tea. Steam curled from the cup like a lazy ghost. You're very comfortable here, the director remarked. Joker stretched like a cat waking from a dream. Comfortable is overrated, but I'm not bored. Yet. Amarin nodded. Then tell me something. If chaos is your nature, does peace disappoint you? Joker thought about that longer than expected. Finally, he answered. Peace doesn't disappoint me. It tempts me. It whispers, don't ruin this. That's more seductive than surprise. Amarin's eyes softened. You feel responsibility? Joker snorted, amused. Responsibility? Me? That's like asking a tornado to apologize for the weather. But his voice lowered, unexpectedly reflective. Still, even tornadoes know when to take the day off. Amarin smiled gently. Rest is not failure. Joker flicked a finger in the air. No, rest is planning without planning. He sat up straight and grinned. Chaos is best served cold, after all. Amarin didn't laugh at the joke, but appreciated it. Then he stood. Perhaps today you would like to join a group session. Meditation. Minds focusing not on emptiness, but awareness. Joker raised an eyebrow. Meditation? That's like asking chaos to sit still and think about its life choices. Amarin nodded. That is exactly what I am asking. Joker held his stare. Then he shrugged. Fine. Let's meditate. Worst case, I fall asleep and dream up something terrible. The meditation chamber was dim, lit by soft bioluminescent panels. Residents sat in a circle, The Vulcan hybrid Vishar, the empathic alien who wept without sadness, the Tellarite savant, and others who didn't fit within society's usual logic. Joker sat cross-legged between them, restless as bottled lightning. Amaran instructed, voice steady, breathe, observe your thoughts, do not fight them, do not obey them, let them exist. Veshar's breathing slowed to a steady rhythm. The empath hummed softly. Even the Tellarite relaxed. The Joker tried. Inhale, exhale. Thoughts flickered in him like fireworks. Chaos isn't noise, it's honesty. Rules are just suggestions wearing uniforms. People fear mirrors more than monsters. He breathed again. Inhale, exhale. Something strange happened. His brain didn't quiet. It didn't storm. It watched itself. For the first time in a long time, he observed his own chaos without becoming it. The thought startled him. His eyes popped open. Amaran noticed, but didn't interrupt. Joker looked around the room. Everyone else was calm, but none were trying to flee into stillness. They weren't forcing peace. They were letting peace exist. He whispered to himself, half amazed, half irritated. This is what sanity feels like? How do people stand being this aware? The Vulcan hybrid whispered without opening his eyes. Awareness is not limitation. It is choice. Joker stared at him. Choice. The word echoed like a coin dropped down a well. He always believed chaos meant rejecting structure. But what if chaos could also choose when to relent? What if chaos could rest without losing itself? Meditation ended. The residents stood gently and drifted to their corners of the station. Only the Joker stayed sitting. Amaran approached quietly. You felt something, Joker scoffed. I felt bored, then curious, then both at once. I hate it, and I want more. Amaran bowed slightly. You are learning balance, Joker waved him off. Learning is chaos wearing formal clothing. Don't tell anyone. He stood and stretched, the tension in his shoulders shifting. No performance this time, no theatrics, just movement. As he walked out, Veshar followed behind. You seemed unsettled, Veshar observed. Joker grinned. I found out chaos can take a nap without dying. It's like discovering a new flavor of ice cream. Surprising, horrifying, delicious. Veshar nodded thoughtfully. You are not chaos, Joker. You are someone who uses chaos because you cannot accept predictability. Joker stopped walking. He turned slowly. And you think predictability is boring? Veshar replied calmly. Predictability can be understood. Boredom is a symptom of stagnation, not of order. Joker narrowed his eyes, intrigued. So you're saying if people learn to understand their flaws, chaos becomes obsolete? Veshar shook his head. No, chaos becomes optional. The Joker stood silent. Optional. A choice. He suddenly burst into laughter, startling Veshar. Not manic, laughter. Bright laughter. Delighted laughter. Almost hopeful. Oh, this galaxy is going to be so much more entertaining than I thought. A universe where chaos isn't needed, but still wanted? That's comedy. Beautiful comedy. He leaned into Veshar's face, grinning wildly. People might choose chaos someday, because they like it, not because they're afraid, Veshar replied calmly. That would make chaos art. Joker gasped in exaggerated shock. And logic would be business. What a dreadful world that would be. They both laughed, one softly, one loudly. Days later, Starfleet received the official proposal from Director Amaran's team. A new division dedicated to emotional and psychological adaptation across the Federation. Not to suppress instability, but to understand it. Not to control fear, but to process it. Not to avoid chaos, but to recognize where it reveals truth. They called it the Department of Cognitive and Behavioral Resilience. Unofficially, the nickname spread like wildfire. DUTA, the Anti-Joke Division. Joker approved, better than a statue. Later, lying on his bed, he whispered to himself, not with menace, but with satisfaction. If they learn to laugh at themselves without collapsing, maybe I'll finally get some real competition. He grinned toward the stars. Until then, I'll rest. Chaos earned a break. Time passed on the holding station without urgency. Days were neither hurried nor wasted. Schedules existed, but only as suggestions. Residents participated as they chose. Observation was mutual. Everyone learned from everyone else. The Joker, surprisingly, began to participate. Not because he was instructed to, but because curiosity pulled at him the way laughter pulls breath from the lungs. Inevitable, natural, involuntary. He attended group discussions, walking circles around the talking participants like a restless comet. He adapted the station's routines into personal theater, pacing during meditation, doodling during therapy, humming during analysis, not to disrupt, but to express. He wasn't trying to break the system. He was testing if it would bend without shattering, and it did, which fascinated him. One afternoon, Director Amaran found him leafing through a digital archive of Federation history. He flipped through entries at an absurd pace: conflicts, cultural shifts, diplomatic disputes, scientific revolutions. Amaran raised a brow. Studying Federation history? Joker smirked. Studying human hypocrisy? Same thing. Amaran smiled faintly. And what have you learned? Joker flicked through pages with dramatic flair. The Federation evolves by accident. Whenever they get too sure of themselves, something bizarre slaps them in the face and forces them to rethink existence. They're like a toddler learning balance by repeatedly falling down stairs. Amaran nodded. Awareness often begins with discomfort. Joker tilted his head. Awareness begins with embarrassment. You have to see how ridiculous you are before you try to improve. Amaran hummed thoughtfully. Then perhaps ridicule is not cruelty, but revelation. Joker grinned widely. Exactly. The universe is one giant roast, and the Federation keeps forgetting it's on the menu. They both laughed, quietly on Amaran's end, wildly on Joker's. A soft voice interrupted them. Veshar stood at the doorway. Joker, I have a question. Joker looked delighted. Questions? My favorite snacks. Serve it up. Veshar hesitated. You disrupt systems. You expose cracks in structure. But what do you protect? Joker paused. That question didn't bounce off him. It sank in. His grin faded into something thoughtful. What do I protect? He repeated, testing the words like a strange flavor. He leaned back slowly, crossed his arms, and stared at the floor. People assume chaos wants to destroy things. Sometimes it does. But real chaos. Joker tapped his temple. Real chaos protects freedom. Freedom to be flawed. Freedom to not pretend. He looked at Vesher, expression strangely solemn. If people can't admit they're broken, they break worse. Vesher nodded, absorbing the idea, like emotional pressure. Joker chuckled softly. Exactly. If you seal a volcano, it doesn't stop the eruption. It makes it catastrophic. Amaran studied him with interest. Then you believe chaos can prevent catastrophe by revealing instability early? Joker pointed at him with childlike pride. Bingo! Give the man a prize. Chaos is a warning label, not a bomb. Veshar blinked, and Starfleet misread the label. Joker cackled, clapping his knees. They thought chaos was the explosion, but chaos was the alarm. The realization left the room quiet for a moment, not uncomfortable, reflective. Joker broke it first. "You know, I'm starting to think you people might actually survive a century without imploding." Amaran inclined his head. "Because you helped?" Joker smirked. "Because you listened." That evening, the station hosted a voluntary discussion circle. The topic: when do systems fail? The room was filled. Residents, psychologists, even a few visiting Starfleet officers seeking insight. Joker was invited to contribute. He didn't stand at the front or pace the room. He sat cross-legged on a table like a child at show and tell. Others spoke first, about logical rigidity, emotional suppression, systemic pressure. Joker finally raised his hand, wiggling his fingers dramatically. "Chaos isn't the opposite of order," he began. "Chaos is the test that proves if your order works. If your system can bend, chaos teaches it flexibility. If your system can't bend, chaos breaks it, and you're forced to rebuild something better." He hopped off the table and walked slowly among the group. The Federation thinks peace means perfection, but peace is messy. Peace is disagreement, handled with curiosity instead of fear. Peace is honesty without punishment. He turned to the visiting Starfleet officers, who listened intently. "Your uniforms, your rules, they're tools. But tools can't replace self-awareness. You can't organize a society if people aren't allowed to admit what hurts." Joker tapped his chest. "Chaos protects honesty. When systems ignore the truth, chaos makes sure everyone sees the consequences." He bowed dramatically. "And if that means I get to make a mess in the name of honesty, well then, I'm a public servant." The room erupted with laughter, real laughter. Amaran watched silently, knowing that in this moment, Joker wasn't performing. He was sharing, and the Federation was learning. Later, alone in his quarters, Joker looked at his reflection in the window. The stars glittered like 1,000 eyes watching him. He whispered, "A mirror that talks back." Who would have thought that was my job? For the first time in his life, chaos felt constructive, not destructive, not spiteful, not entertainment alone. He whispered again, quieter, "Maybe I'm not the punchline. Maybe I'm the setup." He smiled, not wide, not sharp, but warm, curious. If people start laughing at their own flaws, chaos won't be needed as a weapon anymore, just as a reminder. He leaned back, closing his eyes. Maybe that's a future worth watching. The weeks rolled on, and the diplomatic holding station became something unprecedented. A place where unpredictability wasn't feared, but studied, and even respected. It did not treat chaos as a threat to lock away. It treated it as a voice that had something valuable to say if anyone cared to listen without punishment. The Joker did not become calm. He did not become obedient. He did not transform into a model patient. But something about him shifted. He no longer behaved against the system. He behaved within it, testing how it responded not to provocation, but to honesty without an agenda. That was far more interesting than manipulation. Morning he joined Veshar and the empathic resident, Tisari, for breakfast in the lounge. The lights were soft. The aroma of replicated tea drifted like a warm fog. Tisari spoke first, gently, her voice trembling with emotions she constantly sensed. "People fear each other less here," she said, "but the fear is still there, just smaller, like shadows in daylight." Joker nodded thoughtfully. "Fear doesn't disappear. It just stops needing to scream." Vishar sipped his tea, eyes closed. Calmness suits those who choose it, not those who are forced into it. Joker leaned back, pointing his fork at the hybrid. Exactly. Forced calm is just panic wearing perfume. Tisari's eyes softened with recognition. You experienced forced calm on Starbase 12. Joker pretended to be shocked. Experienced it? I inspired it. They tried to build emotional silence like it was a security protocol. Silence is not peace. Silence is suppression. It's like covering a wound with wallpaper. Vishar raised a brow. Then peace requires exposure? Joker clicked his tongue. Peace requires honesty. Honesty requires discomfort. And discomfort requires permission. Tisari whispered. So peace is vulnerability. The Joker looked at her with genuine admiration. Bingo. Someone give her a Nobel Prize in feelings. They laughed together. Not nervously, not protectively, just joyfully, like people sharing a truth they were allowed to say. Director Amarin, standing nearby, listened without interrupting. His eyes lingered on the Joker, who continued casually dissecting emotional philosophy while stabbing synthetic fruit with theatrical precision. Out of curiosity, Amarin asked him, what if chaos were no longer needed as a warning? What if societies learned to integrate vulnerability on their own? Joker tilted his head, chewing slowly. Then chaos stops being a weapon and becomes a choice. Vishar nodded. Like art. Joker grinned. Exactly. Chaos becomes jazz. Tisari giggled softly, improvised, expressive, collaborative. Joker snapped his fingers in delight. See, this is creativity, not destruction. Chaos doesn't want to break things. Chaos wants to make things real. Amarin smiled warmly. You speak of chaos with reverence. Joker shrugged, trying to sound casual, but something honest slipped through. Chaos is truth without etiquette. He froze for a moment. Those words felt larger than he meant them to be. He stared at his empty fork, then whispered, maybe that's why people fear it, not because it's messy, but because it refuses to lie. Amarin bowed slightly. Then perhaps we should help people learn to face truth without fear. Joker blinked. That sounds like a terrible idea. Beautiful, terrible, delicious, Vishar asked. How would such an education begin? Joker rolled his eyes. You don't teach chaos like algebra. You demonstrate it. You let people witness the instability inside themselves until they get comfortable with it, until they stop panicking when they feel uncertain. Tisari nodded slowly. That is empathy, to help someone understand their own pain without trying to erase it. Joker grinned proudly. Exactly. The goal isn't to remove discomfort. It's to make discomfort less scary. Teach people how to laugh at themselves before they collapse under their expectations. Amarin leaned forward, intrigued. Then you believe society should learn to laugh without ridicule? Joker looked at him with unexpected seriousness. They need to learn to laugh with awareness, not at others, not at perfection, but at the idea that perfection was ever the point. A surprising silence followed, not awkward, reverent, as though even the air recognized it had just heard something profound. Later that day, the Joker found himself alone in an observation chamber, looking out into space. The stars shimmered like glitter on black velvet. He stood quietly, hands in pockets, swaying to the rhythm of nothing in particular. He wasn't sure how long he'd stood there when he heard Amarin enter the room. The director approached, speaking gently. Starfleet Command has asked for something unexpected. The Joker smirked without turning around. Let me guess. Uniform redesign, no more primary colors. They've realized red, blue, and gold make them look like children's toys. Amaran chuckled softly. No, they want to create a curriculum to train officers in cognitive resilience. Not to prevent chaos, but to withstand it, to interact with it, to learn from it, and they want you to help design it. Joker froze. Not hostile, not thrilled, just stunned. Me? Teach Starfleet? That's like asking a storm to write a weather report. Amaran stepped beside him, eyes to the stars. And who understands storms better than the storm? Joker's expression shifted. Gone was the playful grin. Gone was the mask of theatrical madness. He appeared thoughtful, vulnerable. He whispered, "I'm not a teacher," Amaran replied softly. "You are a mirror, and mirrors teach by showing." Joker swallowed, suddenly aware of a weight he'd never felt before. Responsibility, not forced, but offered. He whispered, "What if I make them worse?" Amaran smiled kindly. "Then they will learn from that too." Joker stared at him, searching his face for irony. There was none. He let out a shaky laugh. "You people are insane." Amaran nodded. "Perhaps, but sanely so." Joker laughed louder. "Fine. I'll help your little space academy become emotionally stable. Let's see if they can handle honesty without imploding." He pointed at the stars as if they were a challenge. "Better brace yourselves, Federation. You're asking chaos to teach comedy." He grinned, proud and terrified and exhilarated all at once. What could possibly go wrong? The diplomatic holding station felt different the moment the Joker agreed to help Starfleet. Not louder, not wilder, just more awake, as if every corridor and every recycled breath of air knew something unusual was about to begin. A week passed. Starfleet sent files, requests, psychological frameworks, theoretical proposals, and half-formed models for something no Federation academy had ever attempted. Training officers to withstand uncertainty, emotional disruption, cognitive dissonance, and chaos without psychological collapse. No logic drills, no tactical stress tests, no command simulations. This was training in vulnerability, and they wanted the Joker to design it. He sat at a terminal, skimming through their proposals with theatrical exhaustion. "Look at this," he groaned. "They're trying to schedule spontaneity. That's like trying to choreograph a sneeze." Veshar, sitting calmly nearby, raised an eyebrow. "Starfleet seeks efficiency. They structure everything." Joker slammed a hand on the console. "That's the problem. Chaos isn't a protocol. You can't administer honesty through a form." Tisari, sitting on a cushion with a cup of soothing tea, murmured softly, "People fear unstructured emotions. They fear being seen without a script." Joker froze. He turned slowly toward her. "Exactly. Fear isn't about danger. It's about visibility. People hide behind their roles, their uniforms, their logic, their certainty. Because if they stop performing, they might not like what they see underneath." He paced rapidly, thoughts racing faster than his feet. "So Starfleet needs to learn how to be seen. They need exercises that strip away performance, not to humiliate them, to show them that imperfection won't kill them." Amaran entered the room, observing quietly. "And what would those exercises involve?" Joker tapped his chin, eyes wild with inspiration. "We don't test their ability to follow rules. We test their willingness to break them for the right reasons." Vesher frowned. "Rule breaking can lead to disorder." Joker grinned sharply. "Exactly. And if they break rules out of fear, they need training. If they break rules out of necessity, they're ready," Tisari whispered, softly understanding. "You measure not the action, but the motive." Joker pointed at her like a proud teacher. Yes, chaos is a tool when it has purpose. It's a toxin when it has denial. Amaran asked carefully, "How does one reveal purpose under stress?" Joker smiled slowly, devilishly, but not maliciously. "You make them tell the truth, not to command or to survive, but to connect." Hours later, Joker stood at a large transparent board in a meeting space. He scribbled chaotic diagrams, spirals, looping arrows, nonsensical shapes that somehow became a structure. "Phase 1, he announced with theatrical gravitas, "truth without consequence." He drew a large smiling face. "Officers share personal vulnerabilities, fears, insecurities, but no one is allowed to judge. Not verbally, not emotionally, not even telepathically, just listening, no fixing, no advice, just presence." Vesher asked, "Why no solutions?" Joker shrugged. "Because people jump to solutions to avoid feeling uncomfortable. Let the discomfort exist. Let the fear speak without being repaired. That is emotional endurance." Amaran nodded. "And phase 2? Joker smashed his marker onto the board like a drumstick. "Chaos through creativity. They improvise plans with incomplete information. They must choose between imperfect options. No perfect answers allowed. They must justify actions based on intuition and empathy, not logic alone." Tisari murmured, "And phase 3? Joker paused. His voice changed. Soft, serious. Failure without punishment. No reprimands, no shame, only reflection. Officers examine mistakes like scientists examine anomalies, not as faults, but data." He wrote across the board, "Failure. Information." He turned to them, eyes bright. "Starfleet must stop worshiping perfection. They must treat errors as discoveries, vulnerability as data, emotion as intelligence, chaos as potential." Amaran, Veshar, and Tisari stood silently, absorbing the impact. It wasn't a training model. It was a cultural shift. Joker laughed softly at their awe. "Relax. I'm not rewriting civilization." He tapped the board lightly. "Just teaching it to breathe." The first test was small. 5 new cadets were chosen to participate remotely in the initial exercise. Truth without consequence. They sat in a holodeck-like conference space. Joker observed through a secure channel, feet kicked up, popcorn in hand. The cadets hesitated, glancing nervously at each other. Then one spoke. "I'm afraid I'll make the wrong decisions in a crisis," Joker muttered. "Duh. Who isn't?" Another admitted. "I don't think I deserve command." Another confessed. "I freeze during emotional situations." Another whispered, "I don't know who I am outside the uniform." And the last one, trembling, said, "I'm terrified that one day I'll cause harm, and everyone will know it was my fault." Silence followed. No one laughed, no one criticized, no one offered solutions. They listened. Joker sat frozen, popcorn forgotten. Tisari watched him. "You're moved," he scoffed. "I'm entertained, emotionally." But something in his eyes betrayed more. He whispered, "Look at them. They're doing it. They're telling the truth without breaking." Over the following days, Starfleet cadets began voluntarily requesting participation. It wasn't mandatory. That was the key. Vulnerability cannot be forced. They grew braver, more open, less ashamed. Joker observed every session, never interrupting, never provoking, never performing. He watched raw honesty become strength instead of weakness. One evening, Veshar approached him. "You are teaching them stability." Joker shook his head. "I'm teaching them instability, without panic. There's a difference." Tisari smiled gently. "You're teaching them how to carry chaos without letting it carry them." The Joker's expression softened. eyes glistening faintly with emotion he'd never admit to. "I guess I am." A Marin stepped forward. "You are?" "Giving the Federation a gift," Joker smirked. "Chaos is the universe's most underrated present." He looked out toward the stars. "Let's hope they don't return it." News traveled fast, not just through Starfleet channels, but through whispers passed in docking bays, casual conversations between traders, quiet murmurs over shared drinks, secret messages exchanged between rival intelligence agencies. Something strange was happening within the Federation. They were becoming unpredictable, not reckless, not violent, not unstable, just flexible. Their officers were making decisions that couldn't be predicted by logic models. They hesitated less in emotional tension. They improvised more in diplomatic standoffs. Romulan analysts noticed a shift. Klingon tacticians grew suspicious. Even Vulcan philosophers debated the psychological implications. And all of it stemmed from a program no one could fully explain. A curriculum designed by a madman. Weeks passed. Joker's curriculum expanded into a full division of training. The Federation quietly adopted his methods without ever acknowledging him publicly. There were no medals, no announcements, no records with his name. And Joker didn't want any. He liked being the cosmic secret whispered between bureaucrats, security officers, and admirals who understood that sanity wasn't enough to navigate a chaotic galaxy. One evening, he sat alone, watching a holographic display of empty space. Stars drifting silently, an infinite canvas of possibility. He murmured to himself, "They're learning to paint outside the lines." He didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He just breathed. Then came the day Starfleet arrived. A shuttle docked outside the facility. Officers exited carefully, respectfully, not with phasers raised, not with force fields prepared, not with sedatives ready. Just officers, human, present. Captain Reynolds, a composed woman with a dry voice, stood before Joker. "We're here to transition the program to a permanent department. It will be administered by trained specialists from this point forward." Joker tilted his head. "Ah, graduation day." Reynolds nodded. "In a sense, yes. You've done something no one else could accomplish. And now, Starfleet will handle the continuation." Joker rubbed his hands together in mock excitement. "So, I assume this is the part where you try to lock me up, put me in a vault, and throw away the reality key?" "No, just thank you." Joker froze, expression blank. "What?" Reynolds stepped forward. "You helped change our approach to fear, vulnerability, and unpredictability. You helped save the Federation from future threats we can't anticipate. We don't imprison evolution. We learn from it." Joker blinked several times slowly, as if trying to digest a new flavor. "You're thanking me? Without trying to control me?" Reynolds nodded once. "Yes." Joker laughed, not maniacally, not mockingly. A short, genuine laugh of disbelief. "That's a first." Reynolds extended a small device, a shuttle access pad. "You're free to go wherever you want. No escort, no surveillance. We won't chase you." Joker looked at the pad, then at her. "You're letting me leave? After all this?" Reynolds shrugged. "You were never ours to keep." He stared at the pad, then slowly took it. "You know, when you don't treat chaos like a threat, it sort of loses interest in proving you wrong." Reynolds offered a faint smile. That was the idea. Joker walked out of the facility without caution, without guards, without ceremony. The doors opened to a waiting shuttle. Not a prison transport, not a lab craft, just an ordinary shuttle. Tisari, Vishar, and Amaran stood nearby. They offered silent nods. Respect, not attachment. He waved lazily. "Don't throw any surprise parties. I hate seeing myself on cake frosting." The three responded only with calm, grateful expressions. No fear, no denial, no judgment. Joker boarded the shuttle. The hatch closed. Inside, he looked at the console. Destination? The computer awaited a command. He tapped his cheek. Where does a clown go when the circus doesn't need him anymore? He leaned back, arms stretched behind his head. Somewhere that doesn't know it needs a joke yet. But just before initiating launch, he paused. A thought struck him. He whispered softly to the empty shuttle. "Don't get too civilized, Starfleet." He grinned. "You'll miss me." He entered random coordinates on purpose. No star charts, no destination logic, pure spontaneity. The shuttle engines hummed, and Joker vanished into the stars. Back inside Federation records, the phenomenon was given a name. Not a memorial, not a criminal file, just a classified tag for internal reference. Cognitive Resilience Initiative. Origin. Unclassified Independent Consultation. Unofficial nickname. The Joker Protocol. Its core philosophy was recorded in a single sentence. Stability is not the absence of chaos, but the ability to navigate it without losing oneself. Starfleet trained with it quietly. Admirals enforced it silently. Commanding officers used it strategically. Cadets carried it unknowingly into the next century. And somewhere in the galaxy, drifting unpredictably through starlight and madness, a laugh echoed into open space. Not triumphant, not threatening, simply content. The universe would never be predictable again. And for once, that was the point. Thank you for journeying through chaos.